I'm wearing ordinary clothes, after all. As expected, young Siwoo. I believed in you. I believed you wouldn't cross the line. That's young Siwoo for you. Yep. I know because I've been young Siwoo. He's not very manly when it comes to crucial moments. That's normal. Maybe it's because he has a tiny Min Ki-won inside his heart. First, I need to find out where Siwoo went. I want to see him this morning. I want to praise him for doing well. Ring ring. The call went through, ring. The default ringtone of my phone rang loudly. The call was coming from the bathroom. What? He was in there. I ran to the bathroom with a bright expression. Siwoo, are you in there? Why, yeah. I am. What are you doing? Pooping. Siwoo didn't answer. Was that comment a mistake? Did I act too much like family? Well, asking your girlfriend if she's pooping is a bit much. Sorry. Are you doing your business? Did you really need to correct that? I just felt like I was being too thoughtless. Just go rest. It smells. I don't smell anything. Ah, come on. Okay, I'm going. I might have been a bit harsh to Siwoo, but this is also part of Min Ki-won's charm, and Siwoo would understand. Because I'm a good person, the Siwoo I know is too nice for his own good. And the Siwoo who became Min Ki-won is also too nice for his own good. Just don't cross the line. Then we won't make mistakes with each other. I threw myself on the bed and wondered what to do when Siwoo came out. We were supposed to watch movies all night, but I passed out after just one, and Siwoo even cleaned up after we ate. I felt like I should do something too. Should I suggest going out for some sundi soup to settle our stomachs? Or should we have a light meal at home? If so, we'd need to go grocery shopping, but if I went alone, Siwoo would probably complain. I'll wait and go to the supermarket together, then I'll cook for him with the ingredients we buy. I need to make up for falling asleep first yesterday, yep. But if he's not pooping, why is he taking so long? Was he showering? But there's no sound of water. Suddenly, I heard a cabinet click open. The mirror cabinet that you open when toothpaste runs out, soap runs out, toothbrushes wear out, toilet paper runs out, or to dry off after a shower and so on. But Siwoo isn't showering, brushing his teeth, or washing his hands. He's not pooping either. It's completely quiet. So quiet that I can't even hear water dripping after a shower. Then, there are only two things left in that cabinet. Why would he need those now? Psst, psst. I heard the sound of something being sprayed into the air. Ah, my heart ached for a moment. I imagined Siwoo, unable to touch his lovely girlfriend right in front of him, struggling alone. I shouldn't be able to see inside the bathroom. It felt like a one-way mirror that only I could see through. Siwoo, I pressed my lips tightly together, trying not to show my bitter feelings. I wanted to head straight to the supermarket, but I wanted to at least wipe the sleep from my eyes. I had to wait until Siwoo finished cleaning up. It's a problem that I know too well. Some things are better left unknown. I wish I didn't know either. It's unfair to dump everything on Siwoo. The moment I realized Siwoo was struggling alone, I couldn't stick to my decision from yesterday. I need to match his pace. At least until 4 months from now. The furnace in my heart stays warm just by holding Siwoo's hand. Let me try to comfort Siwoo with words rather than actions. Supporting his concours preparation is also part of love. I need to go to school to meet my professor anyway, so there's plenty we can do. I can make him delicious lunch boxes. I can sit beside him so he doesn't eat lunch alone. I can watch him practice and give my opinions. There's a lot I can do. Dates don't have to be outside of school. I'll think of everything I can do. At least until the end of this year, I won't let Siwoo endure alone. After a brief encounter and cleanup in the bathroom, Siwoo noticed that Ki-won's smile was warmer than usual when he came out. I'll just wash my face and then let's go to the supermarket. Oh, sure. Did you sleep well? I'm sorry. I didn't plan to fall asleep so early yesterday. I told you to have just one drink. How much did you drink while I was in the bathroom? About 1 bowl. Hee hee. Anyway, I'll wash up and be right back. Ki-won hopped over the threshold and headed to the bathroom. Until she closed the door, Ki-won didn't say a word. Siwoo watched her and sighed in relief. Good thing he had cleaned up thoroughly. The bathroom would now be filled with the scent of fragrant air freshener. If I hadn't, Min Ki-won knows young Siwoo too well. She would have definitely said something like this. Smell and scent chills down Siwoo's spine. It's often nice that she can easily read his mind, but sometimes it's unsettling that she knows him so well. Let's go. What about your clothes? Clothes? Don't you remember yesterday? Min Ki-won was mistakenly thinking that the clothes she was wearing were her own. But it was clearly oversized, wasn't it? It was Siwoo's shirt that he had put on her after her t-shirt got wet. Siwoo handed her a neatly folded small t-shirt. Oh, my clothes. Yesterday you spilled makgeolli, so I washed it. Only then did Ki-won realize that the clothes she was wearing were Siwoo's. You're right. This isn't my shirt. The shirt was so long that it covered Ki-won's short pants completely, yet she hadn't noticed. Was she still drunk? Or maybe she had mistaken this for her own home again. It had to be one of those two. Ki-won went into the bathroom with a broad smile, but came back out shortly after. Hey! Ki-won clapped her hands in admiration. You're really amazing. What is? In that situation, you took off my clothes and didn't do anything. That's so like young Siwoo. Is that something to praise? Siwoo felt cognitive dissonance. You're a good boyfriend, young Siwoo. Ki-won handed him the t-shirt she had been wearing while asleep, and while Siwoo was distracted by the shirt, she gave him a quick peck. What are you doing? A gift. After giving him a bird kiss, she smiled broadly and headed toward the entrance as if escaping. Sorry. This is all I can do for now, just hang in there a little longer. A flood of emotions Siwoo never thought he'd feel washed over him. His flushed face felt hotter than ever. The musician who had moved beyond black knew that black had come from his bland life, and since meeting Min Ki-won, the saturation of his life had begun to change. That's why he was grateful to Ki-won. He couldn't lie to her. He wanted to tell her everything, even the smallest things. I'm sorry. I did something bad while thinking of you. Ki-won, who was poking her feet into her shoes at the entrance, burst out laughing. No, I was pretending not to know. But why did you have to say it yourself? You knew. I know everything that's in our bathroom cabinet. How could I not know? It was more embarrassing than hitting a wrong note and creating dissonance at a concurs. His face, which had been flushed with excitement, now turned as red as if painted with red paint. Why, you should have just said something. No matter how well I know you, there's such a thing as tact. How could I? Again, why is that a bad thing? Ki-won made a circle with her hand and shook it up and down. It was a gesture no man could misunderstand. I think it's an admirable act to suppress a man's wild nature. Siwoo immediately hunched over. Despite having taken care of important business in the bathroom not long ago, he was reacting again. What's wrong? Nothing. Just go ahead. Are you sick? Hungover? Really pooping? Ah. Come on. Why are you getting upset? Min Ki-won, please. You devilish girlfriend. Seriously. I'll go ahead, so hurry up and finish. Yes, let's just go with needing to poop. Siwoo looked up at Ki-won with resignation and muttered. Thanks for being considerate. Chapter 141. Whoosh. Throughout the trip to the supermarket, we were extremely awkward with each other compared to usual. Siwoo was withdrawn because I had seen through a side of him he didn't want to show, and I was hesitant for fear of saying something wrong again. I thought knowing each other well would make everything better. That was just my own misconception from not understanding romance. For a couple in the bloom of love, knowing each other well is good, but knowing too much can backfire. That's what I realized after 100 days of dating. Yes, it's entirely my fault. I should have pretended not to notice. Instead, I tactlessly tried to understand Siwoo's situation and rambled on as I pleased. From now on, I need to be more careful with my words. I should also develop the habit of waiting until Siwoo organizes his thoughts and speaks. Even if we might have originated from the same existence, we're different people now. There are clearly things we still need to learn about each other. I mustn't forget that. How long has it been since our hands, which we always held tightly even in the heat, have been in our separate pockets? The awkwardness was awkward enough, but not holding Siwoo's hand made me feel strangely anxious. As someone who knew about his death 3 years from now, I couldn't help it. Having him by my side always reassured me, but even the slightest distance made me uneasy. Since we couldn't be together all the time, I'd just made a compromise in my heart. So, what are you making? Only after passing through the air curtain at the supermarket entrance did Siwoo speak to me for the first time since leaving home. Jaeuk. Jaeuk. Sounds good. Thankfully, Siwoo's taste in food hasn't changed, so I don't have to worry much about this part. If I just pay a little more attention to the sensitive aspects of dating, there shouldn't be any discord between us. I need to be careful. Otherwise, a clerk will crack my skull again. We stopped by the meat section and put thinly sliced pork shoulder in the basket. I also added various vegetables to stir fry with the jaeuk sauce. These days, there are quite a few products for single-person households, but considering the price, I had to go with larger portions. Once made, jaeukbakkeum can be stored in the refrigerator and easily reheated, right? I decided to make plenty, thinking of giving Siwoo 4 days' worth of happiness. After filling the basket with enough ingredients, we paid, bought a couple of snacks and drinks, and returned home. It was time to cook after a long while. Can I just watch? Recalling the seaweed soup incident, Siwoo paced nervously beside me as I started preparing the vegetables. His pacing around made me even more anxious. I might cut my finger at this rate. It's fine, just stand still or go rest. I'm really worried. I won't make the same mistake as last time. I read the recipe carefully this time. I even watched videos. Despite my attempts to convince him, Siwoo's expression remained uneasy. He kept looking at me like I was a child left alone by water. This won't do. I need to show off my knife skills. No matter how different my body is now, my skill with tools remains the same. Though I don't cook often, as someone who plays piano professionally, there's no reason for anyone to criticize my wrist snap. Moreover, even though a clerk exists as a separate personality, the swordsmanship talent she left behind lives within me. No vegetable can maintain its original form before me. Vegetables destined to be chopped into pieces and become part of the dish. Tap, tap, tap. While the crisp sound of the knife hitting the cutting board continued in a steady rhythm, Siwoo, apparently not content with just watching, began moving busily beside me. I wondered what he was preparing. It turned out to be a large candle we'd bought for emergencies but rarely used, along with a lighter. Click! The candle lit up with the sound of the lighter. As the hood fan turned on, the small flame flickered gently. Come to think of it, I'd forgotten about that. Not sure if it'll help. It probably will. Living alone and rarely cooking, this was an onion tear prevention method I knew about but had never tried. I first spread the onions, cut to a good size for stir-frying, on the bottom of the pan, accompanied by an appropriate amount of green onions and a few chili peppers. Siwoo, as if he'd been waiting, carefully placed the thawed pork on top, making sure it didn't clump together. By the time we finished preparations, our eyes were red. Of course, having almost no resistance to this sort of thing, my eyes were much redder, and tears were streaming down. I knew this would happen. Ugh, do your eyes hurt? They do, but I can bear it. Is it the power of the candle? It would be better with a gas stove, but we can't do that with induction. I smiled at the candle that had helped protect our eyes. Well, look at that. Even the emergency candle has found its purpose. Come here. Let me wipe your tears. Thanks. Siwoo dabbed around my eyes with a tissue, soaking up the moisture. My eyes still stung, but not so much that I couldn't open them. I covered the pan with a lid and turned up the heat. We needed to wait about 5 minutes. During that time, I brought up what I couldn't say earlier while being considerate. I'm sorry for being so tactless earlier. No need to apologize. But I feel like I wasn't considerate of my boyfriend at all. It's fine. Really. Still, I felt uncomfortable about it. I need to talk about it before we move on. Siwoo's mood had improved considerably after shopping at the supermarket and drinking the small bottled coffee we'd bought. Perhaps that's why he didn't particularly want my apology. Don't apologize. That's all part of your charm. The flames in the furnace of my heart blazed intensely. Truly, this wasn't something the tactless Siwoo should say. That's why my heart beat even harder. Of course, the poop talk was a bit much. Sorry no, and me speculating about what you were doing with that wild nature comment was also a bit much. What? So we both messed up. I'm not saying we messed up, just that it was a bit that's the same thing. Anyway, don't apologize. Siwoo, recalling the earlier incident and letting out a laugh, looked at me and said it was fun. Even that. Siwoo, saying that even such an absurd incident was a good experience for him, and that it was okay because he was with me. The flames in the furnace blazed so intensely they could burst through the chimney. Since you like it so much, I can't stop. When I'm with you, I'm ready to do anything this body enjoys. I keep wanting to do more lovely things. Yes, even now I suddenly started cooking. With the sole intention of giving you a good experience. We've experienced everything we could while going out, but we've never cooked together cozily in the same kitchen like this. Should I make it more fun for you then? Siwoo, about to say he liked it, swallowed his words. I'd prefer not to have the same kind of fun as this morning. It won't be. I told you, that morning incident was my mistake too. Right. It felt good to see his trust in me through his actions. He knows I'm not someone who makes the same mistake twice. I liked that trust. I liked that Siwoo was my boyfriend. And Siwoo must like that I'm his girlfriend. Yes. I can tell without asking. Time's up. Now relax. All I need to do is stir fry. Okay. I'll watch from here. Won't you be bored? Watch YouTube or something. Since stir-frying would take time, I suggested he entertain himself, but instead, this guy connected to the Bluetooth speaker at home and played a piano piece, worried that I might get bored. An intro all too familiar to piano majors. Yet a piece where ordinary people only clap and say ah, this song. About a minute in. It was Chopin's Waltz Op. 64 No. 2. The original piece that was adapted for the second piano battle in that problematic film that trapped ordinary people in fast passages. While the left hand dances the waltz, the right hand sings a mournful cry. My feet naturally tapped to the 3/4 time of this piece that carries the melancholy of life felt in Chopin's performance, a waltz that doesn't quite feel like a waltz. After the short intro, the familiar section begins, and as emotions surge passionately, the rhythm my feet tap also quickens. I'm cooking, but if I close my eyes and open them again, I'm in mid-19th century Europe. Dancing people, and amidst them, the melancholic Mr. Chopin. In the ballroom he depicted, light and darkness coexist. The minor chords dominating the entire piece make one wonder about the deep sorrow coloring the master's inner world. Is your heart burning, sir? What has blackened your chest so? Did something happen to your beloved? Or is it that your love for someone you desired hasn't progressed? I want to know your true feelings. I want to know if my understanding is correct. Until now, interpretations were a black and white world with only two colors. But now it sounds different. Probably because I've experienced love. Hey, hey. Siwoo, who had been standing quietly behind me, suddenly rushed forward and lifted the pan off the induction stove. Beep! The induction stove turned off. Only then did I realize the bitter, stale smell coming from the pan. Oh no, it wasn't Mr. Chopin's heart that was burning. It was the pork I had blackened while lost in musical appreciation. Chapter 142, You Don't Know This. Henghui. Yes, miss. I think I need bridal lessons. Kiwon's request wasn't entirely out of the blue. After all, they had been dating for over 100 days now, and just yesterday, they had spent a cozy night together to celebrate their 100-day anniversary. Like the adorable couple they were, they came back and shared every little detail, though it was so uneventful it was actually cute. Kang Hui smiled contentedly as he brushed Kiwon's hair and asked, bridal lessons for what reason? I think I'm terrible at cooking. What could have happened? Why was she slumping her shoulders with such a shocked expression? This wasn't the usual Kiwon who would cheerfully chatter about what she did with Siwoo today, what happened, and how much fun they had. Don't be so discouraged. Tell me what happened. Kiwon started her story with her lips pushed out, almost mumbling. Since it was our 100-day anniversary, I wanted to cook for Siwoo, so I went to the supermarket. Yes. What were you planning to make? Siwoo really loves spicy stir-fried pork with that wok hei flavor. So I wanted to make that for him. Oh, really? So, at the supermarket I bought pork for the dish. Then I came home, prepared it according to the recipe, and started stir-frying it properly. But suddenly Siwoo started playing classical music for me to listen to. Kangwei, do you know anything about classical music? I do. The famous pieces or the ones you often played? Right. It was Chopin's Waltz Op. 64 No. 2. Do you know it? Of course. You've played it for me several times. As you know from hearing it, it's really a beautiful piece. It makes you feel like you've become the misfit at a ballroom dance, but I was so distracted by the music that I didn't even notice the meat burning. Am I really that stupid? I should have kept stirring with the spatula, but I was just standing there blankly listening to the music. She was chattering so rapidly she could have appeared on High School Rapper. After hearing the whole story, Kang Hui couldn't hold back his laughter. And what did Siwoo do while watching from the side? He helped with various things before that. But letting the meat burn, he thought I was trying to create that wok hei flavor. There was something Kang Hui wanted to point out, but he held back. He didn't want to drive even a small nail into the already deflated Kiwon's heart. Wok hei flavor and burnt flavor are different things. Having been cared for by maids since childhood, Kiwon had rarely been involved in household chores. Naturally, unlike cleaning or dishwashing, which could be easily learned without professional guidance, cooking was an unknown territory for her. It was understandable that she didn't know the difference between wok hei and burnt flavors, or how to create wok hei at home. So, where should he begin? That Siwoo also couldn't distinguish between wok hei and burnt flavors. That she should be reassured for now. Creating wok hei is actually difficult with home cooking equipment. Especially since Siwoo's place has an electric induction stove, not a gas range, right? Yes. It's hard to create wok hei with an induction stove. Really? Aren't they all the same? No, they're different. But wok hei comes from burning anyway, so isn't an induction stove the same as a gas flame? Kang Hui silently looked at Kiwon. He wanted her to realize it herself. After receiving his steady gaze for quite some time, Kiwon seemed to have an epiphany and asked, Are wok hei and burnt flavor different things? Yes. Really? Yes. After pondering for a moment, Kiwon picked up her phone from beside her pillow. Tap 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 tap. Her rapidly moving thumb suddenly stopped. It really is different. Wok hei occurs when ingredients stir-fried at high temperatures undergo the Maillard reaction, when they carbonize from direct contact with fire, or when they are smoked in oil vapor. However, the more intense the carbonization from direct fire contact, the blacker the food becomes. And that unpleasant bitter taste is what we call burnt flavor. Having gained this insight, Kiwon scratched her head. There are restaurants that advertise wok hai, but when you taste the food, it's excessively bitter. That's not wok hai. They've created a burnt flavor. I think I understand now. With this realization, you've already become a better cook than the average person. Congratulations. Seemingly embarrassed by the sudden praise, Kiwon blushed and put down her phone. Her self-esteem appeared to have recovered a bit. Then teach me how to make stir-fried pork with wok hai. Certainly. But, Kiwon had enough wealth to live without ever getting her hands wet. Yet even she was ready to dive into the arduous task of cooking for her boyfriend. The important thing was how she would acquire expertise in cooking from now on. Since wok hai is difficult to achieve with ordinary home cooking tools, a wok and a high-heat burner were essential. However, such tools are typically handled by experienced cooking professionals. They're unsuitable for cooking beginners like Kiwon. Wok hai is an advanced course. If you want to create it easily at home, it's better to use specialized products. Or use green onions as a workaround. Is that so? What would you like to do? We can take shortcuts, or I can teach you properly step by step. Kiwon's eyes brightened as if she had realized something. She was like an adorable disciple clinging to her master, saying she wanted to learn whatever she could. Mom won't mind, right? Of course not. Madam enjoys cooking too. She just doesn't do it much these days because she's busy. I see. You've inherited your mother's talent, so I'm sure you'll become good at it quickly if you learn properly. I see. But you could get burned by fire or hot ingredients. We'll need to be fully prepared. I don't want you to get hurt. Okay. Suddenly hopeful student Min Kiwon of Kang Wee's cooking class. Kang Wee suggested they continue their conversation in the kitchen after having breakfast first. Is breakfast already prepared? Of course. I must have woken up too late. That's fine, you're the young miss after all. I'll wake up earlier tomorrow. I want to observe from the beginning. Even though she was already diligent, waking up and immediately having breakfast before taking the dog for a walk, she now wanted to wake up even earlier. All for the boyfriend she loved so dearly. They truly were a lovely couple. Already acting so lovey-dovey before marriage, imagine how they'd be afterward. With your enthusiasm, I'm sure you'll learn quickly. Kiwon's learning speed was remarkable. Having inherited her mother's cooking genes helped, but simply following recipes from start to finish got her halfway there. And she didn't just follow them, she followed them perfectly. If it said to boil for a few minutes, she boiled for exactly that long. If it said to bake at a certain temperature, that's precisely what she did. Of course, she experienced trial and error, but she quickly incorporated that data into her knowledge and made adjustments. She showed such expertise that it was hard to believe she was cooking for the first time. Even her knife skills, which constitute a significant part of cooking, were exceptionally good, perhaps due to the influence of a flirt. Her copying ability was also impressive. After watching a Japanese chef fillet fish once, she could naturally handle a sashimi knife the next day. All the maids in the kitchen watched anxiously, worried she might cut herself while chopping quickly, but ironically, it was a new maid who almost cut her hand while staring in amazement at Kiwon's knife skills. And so, by mid-September, when the cool weather finally rescued Korea from the heat dome, Kiwon was able to support Siwoo the day before his concurs preliminaries with a special lunchbox she had made herself. Asterisk at the Han River, filled with autumn vibes. Siwoo couldn't help but marvel at the contents of the four-tiered lunchbox being laid out one by one. Did you make all of this? Yes. Amazing, right? First tier, warm, fluffy rice topped with seasoned seaweed and perilla powder. Second tier, well stir-fried kimchi and homemade pickled radish. Chicken breast salad topped with tomatoes and 2 boiled quail eggs. potato and macaroni salad. Third tier, rolled egg, pork neck, beef tenderloin, fried shrimp, boiled octopus, grilled abalone, picked crab meat, grilled mackerel, and tuna sashimi. The fourth tier had pears carved into cute rabbit shapes, and fruit rolls made with banana and kiwi emitted a sweet and tangy aroma. After staring at each tier for a while, Siwoo took out his phone. "Can I take pictures of this?" "Of course." Siwoo took photos excitedly like a child, making sure his face was visible in the shots. "I need to show this off." "To whom?" "To Song Seong-hyuk, and to Yoon Ji-chang if I get the chance." Come to think of it, the three of them had been getting along quite well lately. Originally, despite being under the same professor, I wasn't particularly close with either Song Seong-hyuk or Yoon Ji-chang. I became somewhat closer to Yoon Ji-chang because of my sister's situation, but Song Seong-hyuk had always been like a distant star until my death. Now, we talk often because of the Eclert photo shoot, though he didn't tell me. He must have felt some sense of crisis. Since Song Seong-hyuk had known Min Ki-won longer than Jeong Si-woo, he might have been irritated when Song Seong-hyuk started talking about me. But he's the kind of guy who didn't say anything even after seeing the couple ring on my finger. I wonder if he'll even react when I show off the lunchbox I made. Besides, why feel insecure when we're already dating? I rested my chin on Siwoo's shoulder as he fiddled with his phone with a serious expression, staring intently at his face. "Siwoo, I'm already yours. Don't you know that yet?" Chapter 143, Liar. After starting a relationship, Siwoo became more stable in many ways. Having a girlfriend who always trusted and supported him. Just that alone made him feel so at ease. Ki-won always tried to do things for Siwoo. She always strived to show only her pretty and good side, but there was no need for that. For Siwoo, having Ki-won by his side was enough. Like a totem that restored vitality just by standing still. "How's the lunchbox?" "Delicious." "Really? You've always been good at cooking. Especially dishes that suit my taste." "Isn't that just because we have similar tastes? What tastes good to you tastes good to me. If you've been making food that tastes good to you, of course it's delicious to me too." "What kind of logic is that?" "I'm saying it's delicious." Siwoo gently pinched Ki-won's cheek as she leaned against his shoulder. When he turned, he saw Ki-won looking slightly upset. Hadn't he said it before? That Jeong Siwoo lives inside Min Ki-won now. But anyone could see she was still Min Ki-won. Min Ki-won who wanted to be loved by Jeong Siwoo. "The lunchbox you packed is really delicious, Ki-won." She was truly a demanding woman. A woman who needed to hear exactly what made things good and how they were good to be satisfied. But for Jeong Siwoo, giving such detailed compliments wasn't difficult at all. Min Ki-won always tried to draw out specific answers from Siwoo. That's why the quizzes Ki-won gave were too easy for Siwoo. Everything Siwoo thought, Ki-won was thinking too. When he expressed his thoughts exactly as they were, they became exactly what Ki-won wanted to hear. "It's a taste I'd like to eat often." Ki-won's cheeks turned pink. It was the color that expressed the emotion of love. "Is there any side dish you want?" "I'll make anything for you." Siwoo chuckled and gently stroked the top of Ki-won's head. The autumn breeze tickled them pleasantly as it passed by. "Whatever you want to eat is what I want to eat." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. It was a happy date at the Han River. Clear blue skies and cool breeze. A peaceful park lawn on a weekday morning. It was enjoyable to see boats and cruise ships floating on the river while riding a tandem bicycle together for about 2 km. We stopped the bicycle occasionally to take pictures. We picked cosmos flowers that had started to bloom and tucked them behind our ears for photos. My favorite picture from that day was one with cosmos flowers stuck in Siwoo's hair like antennae. Probably because Siwoo was smiling most happily in that photo. And so was I. "Are you enjoying yourself?" "Ah." Echlert, whom I met again in my dream, was holding a photo album. I sat on the cloud sofa she pointed to. With a few gestures of Echlert's finger, cloud coffee in cloud cups and cloud cookies on cloud plates were placed on the cloud table. Curious, I picked up a cookie and took a bite. It tasted sweet, similar to milk cookies. What are you looking at? Your date from yesterday. I see. So what I see gets recorded in an album like that. What a fascinating inner world. When I lived as Jiang Siwu, I was busy fighting myself in a pitch-black space. Sigh. Echlert clicked her tongue with a displeased expression. Why sigh while looking at happy date photos? I sipped my cloud coffee, sneaking glances at the lady over the rim of my cup. You look like you're having fun. I was having fun. I see. Her piercing gaze made me raise my cup again to hide behind it. Why is she like this, really? She should just say what she means. I couldn't just keep taking it. After all, hadn't I become familiar with knife skills while learning to cook recently? Though practical swordsmanship and culinary knife skills are completely different. But I felt like the Echlert within me had awakened. I thought I could challenge her, just once. Why do you look so displeased? We're living happily just as I feared. As soon as I spoke up, her sharp gaze pierced me. I put down my cup and straightened my chest proudly. Tomorrow is Siwoo's concurs preliminary round and he'll pass it easily. He'll also breeze through the second preliminary round next month. He'll compete in the finals at the end of October. By the time he receives his excellent results, it'll already be late October. Time will fly by as I help him. Just wait until January next year. It's not like I have any aversion to this. I've already adapted to this body enough to do anything. Just a few more months, that's all. Echlert placed her hand on her scabbard, but that was all. She neither threatened me nor drew her sword. Lady? No. She wasn't staying still by choice. Tisk. The tips of the lady's leather gloves were blurry, like a spirit gradually disappearing. Sigh. I wanted to see a perfect ending, but that seems unlikely now. Why did you have to take up cooking as a hobby? Unlike Kiwon's other selves from #0 to #24, who quickly emerged and became one with me, Echlert survived as a separate self for a long time due to two special elements, conducting and swordsmanship. However, as I started cooking, she too began naturally becoming one with me. It was a completely unexpected result. That. I didn't do it on purpose, I know. Min Kiwon needs to do whatever Jiang Siwu wants to feel satisfied. There's nothing wrong with practicing cooking to serve delicious food. The lady slowly untied the red string that secured her scabbard at her waist. Clank! The sword that fell from the lady's waist soon floated up and drifted toward me. I attached her sword to my waist. Though it was an iron sword of considerable weight, it felt as light as a feather when worn. Curious, I looked down at my waist and saw a baton instead of a scabbard, attached to a keychain instead of a red string. The reason I show such obsession is for a reason. A reason you probably wouldn't understand even if I told you. All 26 of us, including me. The lady looked down at her feet with a desperate expression. Couldn't marry Siwu. Couldn't marry? Because you couldn't date? Or because you had to return to Austria? If she meant she couldn't marry because she failed at romance, I would understand. No, it's not about the relationship. Even if I had confessed. Even if we had dated. In the end, I couldn't have married him. As I looked at the lady with a puzzled expression, she flew toward me with a gentle smile. Her warm hands cupped my cheeks. I physically couldn't marry him. I couldn't bear to meet Siwu in that form. Just as questions were piling up in my mind, the lady generously revealed the truth. Not through words, but by forcibly showing me memories of the past. One day in March 2024, you have been infected with TS-Vid. I cannot tell you the exact route of infection. I apologize. It's entirely due to the medical team's lack of capability. Yes. There have been fewer than 10,000 reported cases worldwide. According to reports so far, 99.99% of infected people change their sex. You'll need to prepare for life as a man. I'm sorry. This is all I can tell you. After the consultation with the doctor, which was tantamount to a death sentence, Kiwan rushed home. She locked her door and wept uncontrollably. Agah! Ah! One day in April 2024. Miss, where are you going? I'm just going out for a bit. Kiwan emerged from her room about a week later. Completely haggard, she tried to walk out into the pouring rain without an umbrella. In that state without even an umbrella, I just need some fresh air. Miss, I'll follow you. Please wait here a moment. No, Kiwan told Gangwei with lifeless eyes. Don't follow me. Splash. There was a sound like a heavy object falling onto water. In an instant, something cold enveloped my body. It was water. The coldness I felt in the river just before dying. I opened my eyes wide. How does it feel? The lady was looking at me with sad eyes. We were facing each other in dark water where almost no light penetrated. Don't tell me. After this, yes. I jumped into the water. What? But what could I do? Could you have lived normally in that situation? I kept my mouth shut. Any words now would only hurt her. Of course, unfortunately, I didn't die. My lung capacity was annoyingly good. Before I could sink, Gangwei rescued me. If I had known, I would have taken fewer walks with Ruka. Hee hee. I grabbed the shoulders of Achlert, who was biting her lips tightly with a sorrowful expression. So what happened next? What do you mean? You must have lived for another 10 or 20 years after that, right? The lady looked at a world far beyond the present. While different eras have different standards, will the age of adulthood be lowered in 10 years? Later on, the concept of adulthood becomes ambiguous. You lived longer than I thought. Even so, if what she said before wasn't a lie, she must have lived quite a long time even after becoming a man. Then, by chance, she traveled back in time and became a parallel version of herself. The only difference was when they returned. All 25 Kiwans lived quite long, and then I died in a traffic accident a few days later. That's how I became this parallel version of myself. I exclaimed with a sigh. I thought you said you lived a long time? Was that a lie? Chapter 144. One pair, and then I died in a car accident a few days later. That's how I became myself in this parallel world. I cried out with a sigh. Didn't you say you lived a long life? Was that a lie? Lady muttered with a bitter smile. Sorry, I didn't want to tell you that I died in such a ridiculous way. Who could predict a traffic accident? That's true, but now that I'm dead, I can tell you. It was truly absurd. Lady clicked her tongue and kicked at the clouds. The clumped clouds scattered like a burst balloon. I was riding in a taxi when an accident happened on the opposite side. A bus crossed the center line because of that accident and hit the car in front of us. Our car tried to avoid the cars on the side and in front and fell straight into the river. I was trapped inside the crushed taxi and drowned. My last memory was being in cold water, so I'm certain. So that's why. The reason she was underwater when I first met her. Speaking of absurd, I died the same way. That must have been absurd for you too. Lady patted my shoulder with a sympathetic expression, and soon her eyes widened. Wait, you also died by drowning? Yes. Coincidentally, it was due to an accident on a bridge. So that's why, like a detective who finally found the answer, Lady bit her nails and shook her legs. Right. I thought something was strange. When the 26th Kiwan came, we naturally expected another world's Kiwan to arrive. Her ragged fingernail pointed at me. But you came. Yes, I did. That's why. What do you mean? In that world, it wasn't me who died. It was you. Oh, is that so? Of course. compared to the history of 25 different key ones who had visited before. My case as the 26th key one was the most unusual, and this unusual situation seemed to depend on who ended their life underwater. Just confirm one thing for me. In other words, in the world where I died, key one didn't die. Could it be that key one wasn't infected with TS-vid there? What was different? What was the difference between my past life and the other key one? Around February 2023. Did you come to Korea? Yes, I did. Did you play the piano at a cafe near Siwoo's house? Lady tilted her head. No. So that's it. That was the difference. Key one of this world, key 1-0, played the piano since childhood. The other key ones probably played different instruments. They all came together to become the key one who now plays in the orchestra. I was drawn to that key one as if enchanted. It was because of the choral symphony created by 26 key ones that I came to notice key one. That means key 1-0 played the choral symphony alone in the cafe, just like the key one I remember from my past life. This world isn't much different from the world I experienced in my past life. So 3 years later, Siwoo will be exposed to the risk of an accident as scheduled. That's why key one in this world won't get TS-vid. I can continue to be Min Key one, a woman. All I need to do is save Siwoo from the accident 3 years later. Wait, but just as I was about to finish my thoughts hopefully, one fact I had forgotten grabbed my ankle like a ghost's hand emerging from a swamp. Then in my past life, why did Kiwan return to Austria? I grabbed Claire's shoulder and asked. Her shoulder was gradually becoming transparent, blending with the surrounding environment. Lady, let me ask one more thing. Yes. When did you leave for Austria again? Around March 2024. The date is different from Kiwan in my past life. Did you say goodbye to Siwoo then? No. How could I? I left like I was running away because I was too afraid to face Siwoo. I see. My guess seems to be correct. The accident happened April 9, 2024. Unluckily, it was my 20th birthday. Kiwan from my past life didn't get TS-vid. She didn't become a man, nor did she die. Because Kiwan from my past life left the country on April 9, 2024. She avoided the fate of death. There's no way to know what Kiwan was thinking then. No one knows why Kiwan from my past life left Korea. I'm the only one from that world. And I don't know because I wasn't Kiwan. But fortunately, Kiwan-0 is living almost the same life as Kiwan from my past life, except for her current relationship with Siwoo. This means that whether I want it or not, I will definitely find out what happened when April 9 next year comes. Anyway, sorry for being so pushy. Since you don't have much time left, I hoped you would act quickly and have a child. What are you saying, really? But if you don't do that, what an irresponsible person. I understand she likes Siwoo, but that's too reckless. What if I get TS-vid? Would the child be born properly? Even if it is born, what about Siwoo? What did he do wrong? Lady pressed her lips together and lowered her head. I'm sorry. You're right. She covered her devastated face with her hands. I'm sorry. Really, I'm sorry. This is truly the worst. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders. Even though I couldn't fully understand her feelings, or the feelings of Kiwan who couldn't be with Siwoo, I could understand the desire to see a glimmer of hope before despair arrives. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but you won't face the desperate future you experienced in your world. Just saying that is optimistic, isn't it? No. I'm only speaking based on solid evidence. My memories are hazy. After losing Kiwan, I lived in despair. But I always longed for Kiwan's warm light. I found that longing in a new tube channel. You ran a new tube channel, right? No. Right. That's because Kiwan-0 combined with the memories of musicians added by Kiwan's #1 through #25 to create that brilliance. In my past life, channel alert delighted subscribers with new videos every week until April 2025, when the last video was uploaded. Lady ended her life in her parallel world in April 2024, which is a whole year difference. It wasn't pre-recorded videos uploaded to the channel either after the Banoli Golden Age ended. Kiwon only arranged music that had been recently released at the time of uploading. Naturally, she must have been alive and well until 2025. What bothers me is the activity termination notice, the community notice written in a completely different style, not Kiwon's. Was it written by her family because Kiwon had died? I'm not sure. Let me try to infer through the people around her. Song Sung-hyuk. His activities in 2025. Combining with the information I learned after becoming Min Kiwon, he challenged the Queen Elizabeth competition in the first half of the year. However, he was eliminated in the finals. Later, he challenged the Chopin competition in the second half and achieved the remarkable result of first place. If Kiwon died in April 2025, Song Sung-hyuk might have slipped in the preliminaries of the Elizabeth competition. Kiwon's death would have been a tremendous shock to him too. After pulling himself together for half a year, he could have won the Chopin competition. A speculation becoming a fact. However, it's a truly desperate speculation. All clues point to Kiwon's death. No, it might not be true. There could be other reasons why she quit YouTube. Don't be certain yet. Don't act like you know everything when you don't. Hey. Yes. Lady, whose body had mostly become blurry, firmly gripped my shoulder. Are you anxious? Yes. Min Kiwon, who ultimately passed away at an age similar to mine. More of a mature girl than an adult. And Lady alert. It's okay. It will be okay. It should be okay. She reassured me, replacing anxiety about an uncertain future with comfort derived from certain reality. You're with Siwoo now. As soon as I heard those words, my anxiety melted away like snow. The suffocating feeling like struggling underwater became as refreshing as flying in the sky. There's nothing but happiness in our future. That's what you said, right? Yes, I did. Right. Even things you can't solve alone, you can solve together. Lady smiled faintly. After that smile and one last word, you two are a perfect pair. I woke up from the dream. Huff huff as I calmed my rapid breathing, I thought of one person. Someone I always wanted to see. Someone I always wanted by my side. I wanted to see his smile. I wanted to be in his arms, to hear his voice and breathing. Now, right away. Chapter 145. Laplace's Demon. Since entering the second semester, Professor Baek Yeomyeon had been busier than ever. His student Siwoo had broken out of his shell and begun to spread his small wings, and Yoon Jae-chang, for whatever reason, suddenly started attending his private lessons without fail. Song Sung-hyuk, who was already diligent, pestered Professor Baek even more than before, saying he wanted to reach greater heights. And now, even Kiwon had become Professor Baek's student. However, what brings you here? Hello, Professor. It's been a really long time. Indeed. It's been about 5 years since I last saw you. Kiwon's mother, the pianist born in Austria. He never expected Margaret Hebler to visit Hanny University in person. True to someone who had learned Korean language and culture for a long time following her husband, Margaret bowed at the waist in Korean fashion. Thank you for teaching Kiwon. Today did you come to watch her lesson? No. I just have something to discuss with you. What kind of Is it about Kiwon's education plan? If so, I welcome it anytime. Haha. No, that's not it. Margaret pulled out a small box of tea from the tote bag hanging on her shoulder. I bought this during my trip to France. Shall we talk over a cup? That would be nice. You seemed busy, so I was feeling quite hesitant. These days my students have suddenly caught fire. Hee. Because of Kiwon, right? Yes, that's right. Postponing the main topic as much as possible, the two brewed warm tea in mugs. When the sweet fragrance of black tea had spread evenly throughout the room, Margaret spoke. Well, I'm not sure where to begin, but first, let me ask you one thing before we start. Sensing that the conversation would be lengthy, Baek Young-yeon pushed aside the documents piled on the table. Margaret clearly had something important to discuss. That's why she had flown this far. If he showed signs of being busy with work, she wouldn't be able to speak comfortably. You're like a father to Siwoo, aren't you? Well, that's how I think of myself, but Siwoo might feel differently. Still, you've been looking after Siwoo since he was little. That's true. That kid has seen my wife and me longer than his own parents. Then would it be alright to consider what I'm about to say as a conversation between parents? For the sake of our children who might become a couple in the future. Stroking her hair, which resembled the color of grass under the summer sun on a bright day, Margaret curved the corners of her eyes. Siwoo is in a relationship with Kiwon. Because of the messages they exchanged throughout their lessons, he couldn't help but know, even if he didn't want to. A conversation about the children's future. Should I really be involved in this conversation? Baek Young-yeon recalled his friends who had departed for heaven before him, and the words of entreaty they had left him in his dreams. Be Siwoo's father. Siwoo will be fine. Even if Siwoo didn't acknowledge it, Baek Young-yeon and his wife were Siwoo's other parents. It wasn't something they had chosen, but they had raised Siwoo without shame. So, if it was an important conversation, he had the right to hear it as Siwoo's parent from Kiwon's parents. Yes, let's do that. Margaret released the tension in the corners of her mouth. With a somewhat sorrowful expression, she said, Kiwon has a congenital illness. An illness? Yes. Well, she looks quite healthy for someone with an illness. It's a disease that doesn't show any outward symptoms. Though she didn't mention the specific name of the disease, Margaret didn't flinch. It's an incurable disease with current technology. We don't even know when she might die. It's such a rare disease that it's not well known. That's I understand your surprise. Even I wouldn't believe it if someone told me a perfectly healthy child could suddenly die. Like someone prepared to accept any outcome, Margaret closed her eyes resolutely. But Kiwon is like a candle in the wind. No one knows when she'll die. Not even I know, nor does she. At this moment, Baek Young-yeon was curious about one person's thoughts. Did she really know all of this? Did she live so calmly while knowing? Does Kiwon know about this? Margaret smiled bitterly. At age 5, after separating from Siwoo, Kiwon went through a confusing period with multiple personalities. Yes, I told her 3 years ago. 3 years ago, right before she started her new YouTube channel. Yes. After learning the truth, Kiwon chose to do that. Exhaling a long breath as if sighing, Margaret said, she wants to leave proof that she existed in this world. But she doesn't want anyone to be sad when she dies. So she'll live as a faceless pianist. And disappear from the world with the closing curtain called end of activities. These are all Kiwon's words. Baek Young-yeon's hand trembled slightly as he set down his teacup. Clatter, clatter, the cup and table collided gently. A star that descended to the night world took root on earth and became a radiant cherry tree. The flower that bloomed from that tree restored everything to young Siwoo. Because of that tree, Siwoo was able to escape the darkness. But that tree was rotting from the roots. It just wasn't visible on the outside, it was withering. With great difficulty, Baek Young-yeon asked a question. So does this mean Kiwon and Siwoo must inevitably part ways someday? Margaret corrected Baek Young-yeon's words. Couples are destined to part ways eventually. The timing just differs for each. She hadn't come to pronounce Kiwon's death sentence. I'm telling you this because I want the two of them to be as happy as possible during the time they have together. It was an incredibly important day for Siwoo. In his previous life, he had approached the preliminary round with the arrogant thought of it's just a mere competition, but this time was different. It was time to present music that he had reinterpreted. not just copying the performances of masters. Siwoo was probably quite nervous, conscious of this fact. But on such an important day, how long are you going to keep this up? Just stay still. I'm doing something important. You're just hugging me like usual. Like usual. This is different. As soon as the competition preliminaries ended, I'm whining while clinging to Siwoo in a cafe. It was an inevitable, natural reaction, partly because I was anxious about what might happen next April, and partly because I felt the despair and anguish of the other Min Ki-won who had failed. It felt like if I let go of Siwoo here, he would just drift away. It felt like I had to do this. It felt like I needed to stay by his side constantly. It felt like if I lost him, everything would end right here. Why are you so anxious? Did something happen? And Siwoo quickly noticed my turbulent emotions. He noticed the subtle emotional fluctuations that I never showed in my expression. Because it was me, because I was me, he could tell. I'm just asking, but yes. What would you do if I got TS vid? Siwoo looked genuinely surprised. Why are you suddenly asking that? He looked at me thoughtfully and asked. Ah, that workshop owner from before. Are you worried you might have caught it from them? It's not a contagious disease. We still don't know that. Not everything has been discovered yet. That's true. Siwoo smiled. I know better than anyone that he wasn't such an optimistic person. Then, I'd get it too, so it wouldn't matter, right? He was the Siwoo I knew, but at the same time, he wasn't the Siwoo I knew. He was a completely different person. It was as if the tiny Min Ki-won inside him was shining. We already switched bodies when we were young, remember? Back then, I was really depressed, like I'd lost everything, but if we both really got TS vid and our genders changed or something, we could just think back to that time. His outlook on the future was bright. The dark future seemed even darker in contrast. But still, the light didn't stop. So I could emit such light. I needed Min Ki-won to erase the ink stains on my light. I needed myself. I needed Ki-won. If only you changed, that would be a problem, but then I'd become a famous pianist, earn tons of money and invest in someone researching TS. Wouldn't that work out somehow? Even diseases once thought unconquerable. In modern times, they've all succumbed under human feet. Of course, there are still plenty of intractable diseases, incurable diseases, and mysterious illnesses. But humans have overcome reality and pioneered the future, no matter how long it takes. Idiot. If that's the case, I could just use my own money. I'm just saying. Siwoo embraced me, who was in his arms, even more warmly. I'm going to spend my whole life with you. What couldn't we do? I won't ask him to love me even if I change. I won't say that's what true love is. I'll find a way for us to love each other just as we are. A way to head toward the happy future that I want, that Siwoo wants. Siwoo. I recalled the lady's words. Perhaps the solution was surprisingly simple. Maybe there's no need to overthink it. Fate can sometimes be overturned by a single trivial choice. And we've already changed many situations, haven't we? Siwoo overcame his darkness. And I'm dating Siwoo, which is what I wanted so badly. Our future may have already changed significantly. Because we're together. Can I stay at your place for a while? Chapter 146, Uncertainty Principle. Can I stay at your place for a while? The moment he heard those words, 1,000 thoughts raced through Siwoo's mind. What's this? Is she planning to invade my home and seduce me physically? Does she mean she can't wait until we're adults, so she's trying to create a fait accompli somehow? Or is she waiting for me to lose control and pounce on her? So suddenly? This was truly a strange and suspicious development. The day they made couple rings and returned home, the next day and for several days after that. She hadn't mentioned anything related to this, but now she suddenly brings up TS vid. Could it be Ki-won? Has she contracted TS vid? Is she really in danger of turning into a man? No, that can't be it. Is that not okay? Kiwon pressed Siwoo with a pleading look. It was her usual affectionate offensive, but the problem was, hey, Kiwon. This is a public place. The cafe owner had been staring at the two of them with bulging eyes for quite some time. It wasn't that Siwoo disliked hugging Kiwon. Even when dating, anyone would feel uncomfortable with someone watching. Ah, yes. Sorry. As if suddenly coming to her senses, Kiwon straightened her body that had been leaning at a 45-degree angle. Sorry. I'm sorry. She was unstable. She couldn't sit still. Occasionally she would ruffle her hair, mumble as if trying to say something, but ultimately give up without completing her words. It's okay. Take your time and tell me. What's wrong? I'll listen to whatever you have to say. Could it be the conversation they almost had when they went to the pension before? She had given off hints that something was bothering her, but never actually talked about it. Whether she had finally resolved to speak about it, or whether she had reached a point where she couldn't keep it to herself anymore, he couldn't tell. Today was the opportunity. It was time to let her unburden the anxiety and worry she had been carrying. Let's go home first. You mean my place, right? Yes. Here is Gi-won glanced toward the counter. She had seemed completely unconcerned, but apparently even she couldn't help but notice such an intense stare. I'll go to the bathroom first. Okay. I'll wait for you in front of the store. Once Siwoo was alone, the cafe owner who had been watching from the counter approached. Her expression suggested she had many questions. Is something wrong? He knew she was the nosy type who would say something, but he didn't expect such a direct question. No, it's nothing. His vague response was met with a shocking reply. Nothing? She looks like someone going to her death. What? Oh my. I'm sorry. My husband always told me to be careful with my catastrophic comments. No. What you just said. What did you mean? Moistening her lips and gauging Siwoo's reaction, the owner slowly began to speak, while looking at the young lady's expression. It suddenly reminded me of him. You mean your late husband, right? Yes. It brought back memories. If you don't mind me asking. He knew it might be impolite, but since she had already been somewhat intrusive, this much should be okay, right? Making a small rationalization in his mind, Siwoo asked, Your husband, could you tell me how he passed away so young? Fortunately, the owner didn't seem too disturbed. As if it were a very old story, she began to speak candidly. It was an incurable disease. You know, like those terminal illnesses you see in dramas. I never thought we'd part so early. Right after we got married, he suddenly went to heaven all by himself. Though she didn't go into detail, Siwoo could tell that the owner's husband had lost his life at least in his 20s. With a bitter smile, she muttered a superstition well known among entertainment industry people. Heaven doesn't leave geniuses alone. It couldn't be helped. Was it this short, superstitious saying which some might dismiss as mere psychological comfort that had given her the strength to live alone for so long? Siwoo quietly waited for her next words. When did my husband tell me about it? About half a year before he died, I think. That's when he told me. Enough time to organize one's thoughts, but not enough to accept one's fate. I cried so much. The human heart is strange. I'd tell myself not to cry, not to cry. I'd think that 500 times before going on a date. But as soon as I saw his face, the tears would just oh my. Every time we met, I'd cry. My husband would comfort me. We wasted time like fools, and then the day before he died, my tears finally stopped. So as I watched him on his deathbed, I couldn't cry anymore. My husband, who had always been smiling, cried for the first time when he saw me like that. You're prettiest when you smile. With those final words, he became a star in the sky. It's been almost 20 years now. It's probably nothing. It must be a joke. There's no way something like that could happen to Kiwon. The layers of self-rationalization crumbled, revealing the hidden anxiety and worry. The warmth that Kiwon had given him was gradually fading away. The dormant voices within Siwoo began to cough incessantly. A terribly cold winter was returning. No, Kiwon is dying? At such a young age? Why? For what reason? Why must Kiwon die? Who decided such a terrible fate? If Kiwon has to die, then rather a pathetic guy like me, young man. Thump. A pair of heated hands gripped Siwoo's shoulders firmly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you such a story. The owner's eyebrows drooped at the corners. She was worried that she might have said something unnecessary, something that had upset Siwoo. No, thank you. If you hadn't told me, I might have heard the shocking news without any mental preparation. Siwoo smiled, saying he was fine. Then he stepped back slightly and bowed his head. You don't know anything yet. Talk to her properly. It might be nothing. I hope my story doesn't end up being helpful. Yes, I hope so too. Wait just a moment. The owner ran to the counter and began frantically stamping a coupon card. Thump, 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 thump. The wooden table vibrated noisily for a moment. Soon, a coupon card with 10 leaf stamps was handed to Siwoo. I'm sorry. I don't know if this helps, but this is all I can give you. No, it's fine. Is this not enough? From now on, I'll give you 1 free drink every day at our cafe. Just come by. No, really, it's okay. The owner bowed deeply, apologizing for saying unnecessary things. Talk to her properly. It's probably not something serious. It shouldn't be. I don't want anyone else to experience the same sadness I did. Yes, I'll give you my blessing. Trembling slightly, the owner clasped her hands tightly and muttered a prayer. And most problems can be solved together. Understand? Even if it's hard alone, you're stronger together. Yes, thank you. Just then, Kiwon came out of the bathroom and tilted her head curiously at the two of them. Her face, which had been dark with worry until she went to the bathroom, somehow looked calm and composed now. Instead, Kiwon rushed over and asked the owner, Did something happen? Your expression. No. He said his stomach hurt. He was waiting for you since you were in the bathroom. Oh, really? I'm sorry. Please go to the bathroom quickly. Siwoo winked at the owner so only she could see, and she nodded and rushed to the bathroom. I guess my bathroom timing was bad. As if nothing had happened, Kiwon smiled brightly. My husband, who had always been smiling, cried for the first time when he saw me like that. Seeing her smile, Siwoo's chest ached. What's wrong? Let's go home quickly. You had such a serious expression just a moment ago. Why are you fine now? What? What did I do? Min Kiwon, completely changing her expression and trying to act like nothing happened. But he couldn't let it go. He couldn't keep being deceived. Even if Min Kiwon tried to deceive him, he wanted to be the boyfriend who would figure it out. Let's go home first. Siwoo extended his palm toward Kiwon. As if she had been waiting, she placed her palm on top of his. Before they could even feel the warmth passing between their joined hands, Siwoo suddenly, whoa, pulled Kiwon's body toward him. Hey, I'm falling. Let's go quickly. Why are you suddenly like this? As a startled Kiwon flailed, Siwoo let go of her hand and, ugh. Eep. Hey. He lifted her up like a princess and started running. Are you crazy? Kiwon's hands repeatedly hit Siwoo's back, but it didn't hurt at all. What hurt now was Siwoo's heart. The pride of a boyfriend who wasn't trusted. Crazy about you, yes. Chapter 147. Be with. As soon as he returned home, Siwoo locked the door. Electronic door lock. The lock mechanism. The safety chain above the lock. He even stacked boxes of groceries in front of it, completely blocking any means of escape. What are you doing? You can't leave here. All of a sudden? You said you wanted to live here. If you do that, you can't leave either, you know? Siwoo stood like a drill instructor in front of Kiwon, who had slumped down and lifted his chin. From now on, this is a room you can't leave until you tell the truth. Seemingly remembering something, Kiwon's face flushed as she shouted, "Hey! So tell the truth. Today is the end of your running away." Kiwon glanced around, eyeing the window. She was searching for an escape route, but since Siwoo's place was on the second floor, jumping from the window would result in immediate injury. Her bodyguard might be waiting below, but she couldn't be sure. Siwoo walked over smoothly and embraced Kiwon. "You can't run away." Kiwon's body went limp. As if giving up on escape, she rested her chin on Siwoo's shoulder. "Fine, I won't run away." They remained embracing for a while. Just as their heartbeats grew louder, Kiwon quietly spoke. "Hey, Siwoo. Yeah, do you believe that I was the same person as you?" That was already a settled matter. Why was she bringing it up again now? Siwoo patted Kiwon's back and said, "I told you months ago that I believe you. Still, things could be different now than they were then. I still believe you." "I see, so you say." Kiwon sighed deeply. The truth she had been hiding was finally about to be revealed. "Then, do you also believe that I came from 3 years in the future?" But the moment he heard the truth, Siwoo felt as if time had stopped. More precisely, his thoughts momentarily froze. "I knew you wouldn't believe it. Let's end the conversation here." "No, I believe you. I do. Really." "Then prove that I came from the future." The person revealing the information was asking for proof. Min Kiwon, what a vicious woman. But the answer might be closer than expected. Siwoo closed his eyes and traced through Kiwon's actions one by one. Her impulsive behaviors. Actions she didn't need to take Senior Yoon Ji-yu. That family matter. You didn't need to get involved, but you deliberately did. You're quick to catch on. You told me to guess. Yes, that's correct. Kiwon chuckled and told Siwoo other things he hadn't noticed. It was disappointing to find out she wasn't really a villainess, but Yoon Ji was a villainess to you 3 years later. More precisely in the world where I lived. So you approached me first to separate her from me. Correct. And your final exams this semester. The questions I pointed out appeared exactly on the test, right? You pointed them out. Kiwon stepped back and swung her fist. Far from threatening, it was cute. I did point them out. Want to die? No, you did. Yes, that's right. Right. I repeatedly emphasized that these questions were important. They would have appeared exactly on the test. There were some differences, but I think about 95% matched. Kiwon sighed briefly and rested her chin on Siwoo's shoulder again. If you still don't believe me, I can also name the 3 people who will advance to the finals of the Donning Concurs Piano Division next month. That would be possible. You came from the future, after all. Yes. You'll be one of them, so one of the others will drop out. You don't know that yet, do you? No. You'll definitely advance. Because you're completely different from the me who used to play dark music in the past. At Kiwon's confident words, Siwoo asked in a worried voice. It was a conclusion drawn from the inevitable expansion of thought. About drowning to death. Could it be it wasn't in the past? When they went to the pension, she was extremely afraid of being submerged in water. Yes, Kiwon murmured as if resigned. In the world where I lived. I died in an accident on my birthday 3 years later. By drowning? Yes. The bus crossing the Han River Bridge collided with an oncoming truck and flipped over vertically like in a movie. I fell into the water and drowned. She spoke about her own death without the slightest hesitation. She had already become detached from death. Perhaps she was trying to forget that memory. And the world I lived in and this world are eerily similar. Which means, yes, you too. You could have a similar accident 3 years later. Kiwon bit her lip, suppressing her emotions. Have you heard of a self-fulfilling prophecy? If you speak it, it comes true, something like that. Yes. I was afraid that would happen. If I talked about what happened to me, I was afraid you might meet the same fate. I was scared you might die because of me. That's why I couldn't tell you. Since Siwoo wasn't Kiwon, it was difficult to understand exactly how she felt, but if it had been Kiwon instead of Siwoo who would face such a fate in 3 years, and if he had witnessed it and returned to 3 years earlier, it wasn't difficult at all to empathize with the devastated Kiwon. That won't happen. How can you be so sure, you idiot? It won't. How many futures have you already changed? Kiwon scolded Siwoo for being overly optimistic. What's meant to happen will happen. That was something a 25-year-old Kiwon would say after being thrown into a miserable fate. Since all versions of Kiwon met tragic endings, naturally, Kiwon could only envision a pessimistic future rather than an optimistic one. Rather than thinking optimistically and facing a shocking future, it's better to think as negatively and pessimistically as possible. The girl who had scattered pink petals with warmth like a spring breeze was nowhere to be found. The girl lamenting about a hopeless future in front of young Siwoo now was completely different from the Min Kiwon he knew. This is the burden Kiwon has been hiding all this time. She knew Siwoo would die. She also knew the future wasn't entirely bright. So she kept telling herself to look at things objectively and negatively to prepare for the shock. But in front of me, she was always so bright, with a reassuring smile, cute and lovable ego, and a mature demeanor that seemed ready to listen to anything. She had guided young Siwoo. She was an angel who appeared to protect Siwoo. No, she was a good person pretending to be an angel while knowing she was human. So that's why. The reason you took such care of me when I hurt my ribs, that's why. Kiwon flinched. In the future you came from. I suffered because of that injury, right? That's why you made sure I got complete rest. Kiwon didn't answer. Siwoo smiled faintly. Her silence meant it was the truth. And you helped me find my color, too. That's another future you changed. You also helped me reclaim memories of my first love. There's so much more you've done for me. He felt moisture on his shoulder. Siwoo closed his eyes gently and hugged Kiwon tightly. You've actually been changing the future. You've been doing well all this time. Everything about me has changed thanks to you. You're truly amazing. I know it. Die? Who says so? I'm definitely not going to die. Don't worry. Why would I die when you're here? You'll come and save me. Hot tears streamed down Siwoo's shoulder. No, it's not about you dying. I can prevent that. Her voice, tinged with despair, trembled. If I die, I can't prevent that. So it wasn't just him who might die. Was Min Kiwon also under the shadow of death? Though it was the most shocking revelation of the day, Siwoo said nothing. He had been receiving care from Kiwon all this time. In return, Kiwon had given her heart and soul to young Siwoo. Occasionally she acted spoiled, but that was just a tiny fraction of the desires Kiwon revealed. Just by looking at her expression, he could tell how much she wanted to pounce on Siwoo. I can't just keep receiving care forever. The woman he loved was struggling. She was suffering, wary of an uncertain future death. It's not nothing. You look like someone heading to their death. What words could comfort her? The answer was known to young Siwoo's inner self. She was Min Kiwon, but at the same time, she was also young Siwoo himself. What she needed now was faith. Faith that they could overcome any future together. Even if it's hard alone. Together, we're strong. No, I'll prevent it. What? I'll make sure you don't die. By any means necessary. Kiwon stammered, seemingly taken aback. But how? I don't even know how I'll die. Let's live together. Siwoo's energetic voice resonated throughout the room. I'll keep watching over you. I'll always keep you in my sight. If you feel anxious, just hold my hand. Piano. You don't have to play if you don't want to. Kiwon's hands tightly gripped Siwoo's collar. After groaning for a long time as if enduring pain, she said, "What nonsense are you talking? Why wouldn't I play the piano?" The corners of Siwoo's mouth twitched. What an absurd woman. She barely reacted to the word death but reacts to piano. Just like Min Ki-won. Don't ever say such things again. Got it? The light returned. Min Ki-won was back. Chapter 148. Code S. I thought I was acting like a real lunatic. When he said he was crazy about me, I didn't show much reaction, but when he said he wouldn't play the piano, I snapped at him asking if he was crazy. It felt like I'd turned into one of those overbearing mothers obsessed with their children's education. Had I already forgotten what happened to Mr. Yoon Guancheol after he became obsessed with his children's music? Oh no. Forget what I just said. It's fine if you quit the piano. No. But there was one fact I shouldn't forget. You know me well. I just pushed piano to second place for you, but it's still important to me. This man is Jeong Siwoo, the person I know best in the world. A life without piano is unimaginable for him. And now Min Ki-won is just a special sauce added on top. Freshly cooked rice is warm and fluffy and delicious. But when the right sauce is added, the taste is enhanced. And once someone has tasted rice with sauce, could they ever enjoy plain rice again? Moreover, Min Ki-won isn't just any ordinary sauce. Some days she's spicy pork, other days she's stir-fried beef, and sometimes she's mapo tofu. Her flavor changes moment by moment. I, Min Ki-won, knew this better than anyone. A life without Min Ki-won is like Jeong Siwoo unable to play the piano. I guess so. Of course. You should know that. Well, yes, but saying it out loud feels a bit embarrassing. Then I'll say it for you. Siwoo took a deep breath and shouted loud enough to shake the building. Jeong Siwoo can't live without Min Ki-won. It happened so suddenly that I couldn't stop him. Seeing my dazed expression, he got even more excited and started shouting more. Jeong Siwoo needs Min Ki-won. Hey, stop it. If Min Ki-won dies, Jeong Siwoo will follow her. This crazy guy. He's absolutely insane. Was I really like this? Really? It wasn't particularly pleasant to see a side of myself that even I didn't know existed. But still, to have someone tell me that they need me. To have someone say they can't live without me. It makes me happy. So my past self experienced this happiness before dying? How unfortunate. Like wrapping my arms around a tree, I silently embraced Siwoo's neck. The future can be changed. The wishes of 26 Min Ki-wons had gathered, and to that was added Jeong Siwoo's desire to live. Everyone's prayers united to begin changing the future. We overcame the broken ribs. We treated the Yoon Ji-yu family's cancer. And now it was our turn. Mine and Siwoo's turn. With Siwoo I can change it. The key card to change Jeong Siwoo's fate is Min Ki-won. And the key card to change Min Ki-won's fate is Jeong Siwoo. We are together, never to be separated. The rope attached to the anchors we planted in each other's hearts long ago holds us firmly together. If we die, we'll die on the same day at the same time. If we live, we'll spend our lives together. Okay, stop shouting now. Yeah, just a moment. Let's stay like this. Siwoo supported his tilted body with his arms while bearing my weight. However much he'd been exercising lately, he didn't waver at all. I leaned comfortably against his heart. I listened to the beat of life. I felt our existence through the subtle vibrations. We're alive. We're alive. We will be alive. Because I'm here. Because we're here, Siwoo. I adjusted my position. For a while now, something had been rising vigorously beneath his lower body. Want to? No matter how well Siwoo had been holding back all this time, we'd never had such long and intense skinship as today. What? Whether he didn't understand or was pretending not to understand, I couldn't tell. But as the cunning adult, I needed to ease his guilt, just this once. It's okay. It's really okay now, I reassured myself as I persuaded Siwoo. We had been ignoring the natural demands of instinct for too long. As a result, an enormous amount of coal had piled up in the furnace. We needed progress. We had enough strength to move forward. All the key ones had already given permission, and I alone had been cowering behind the shield of conscience. MMPH. Siwoo's eyes widened as I lunged at his lips like a beast. There was nothing romantic about it, but with this fierce expression of affection, I declared, from now on, I won't hold back anymore. The conversation between the parents of two children who appeared normal on the outside but had many deficiencies continued for hours. Darkness had fallen outside the building. There is a way to treat it. Really? Yes. However, Margaret blushed. It's a method that's a bit embarrassing to tell the children about. Don't tell me. Yes. And since the success rate isn't 100%, I was hesitant to mention it. Well, this is a conversation between adults. Let's hear it. For a moment, Margaret recalled the past. How she, suffering from the same genetic disease as Kiwon, had managed to outrun death. It's the process I had to go through to give birth to Kiwon. Why are you pretending not to know? It's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I didn't expect that at all. I told you it was a method too embarrassing to tell the children. I apologize. It's been a while since marital relations became more of a duty. Oh my, really? You two still seem to get along so well. Getting along well and having relations are somewhat different feelings. Professor Baek Ju-myeon, who had become rather embarrassed, asked Margaret, if it's that, then we don't need to worry much, do we? Is that so? Yes. While I haven't been closely observing, though he hadn't wanted to know, Siwoo's romance was progressing smoothly. When Siwoo was in his lessons, Kiwon always sat beside him, listening to his playing from beginning to end. She didn't evaluate or advise. She just quietly kept her place, as if that was where she belonged. Even for a girlfriend with a good relationship, that seemed excessive. He had even asked Siwoo if such close monitoring wasn't uncomfortable when Kiwon went to the bathroom. Actually, I feel anxious when she's not beside me. With those words, Siwoo dismissed Baek Ju-myeon's concerns. They're truly in a beautiful love, so I wouldn't be surprised if they soon bear fruit. Hee. Margaret covered her mouth and smiled like a young lady. I heard roughly from Ganghui, but it's even more than that. It's incredibly passionate. After a brief pause, Margaret asked Baek Ju-myeon, have you told Siwoo about contraception? Don't they learn that in high school these days? During sex education. That's not enough. He's a young man, so he probably studied on his own. I never forbade him from looking things up. Self-study? Margaret burst into laughter. That's good. The timing is perfect too. Timing? Shouldn't a good mother keep track of her daughter's cycle? That way, if something sudden happens, she can give mature advice without panicking. That timing. Baek Ju-myeon averted his gaze in embarrassment. Anyway, given the situation, Kiwon should be able to live a long life. That's a relief. Well, it's not certain. We'll have to monitor her progress. But it's one less worry. Margaret smiled broadly at the report that had just come in from the security personnel. Security 22A, Code S, Security 22A. We will maintain sufficient distance so as not to disturb the young lady. Security 22A will report again when the code is lifted. They've come such a long way. When they were young, the two spent a year together like family. She thought they would only have a good influence on each other. But Siwoo was a complicated child, and their relationship seemed to end that way. Now, 14 years later, they met again as if by fate and began to fall in love. When they liked each other so much, these two had experienced inexplicable phenomena together that others couldn't understand. Perhaps from that time, they only had each other to rely on. Of course, entrusting one's fate entirely to another person is unreasonable, so Margaret never forced Kiwon to look only at Siwoo. Even her attempt to adopt Song Seong-hyuk was, in a way, giving Ki-won a new option. However, while Seong-hyuk could become Ki-won's family, he could never be her lover. From the age of 5, before she even knew what love was, Ki-won's only man was Siwoo, who had found her precious accordia doll. It's a day worth celebrating. Shall we have a drink? Since you've come all this way, may I invite my wife as well? She's been wanting to meet you. By all means. I only regret not bringing my husband. Otherwise, we could visit Austria soon. I think we might have some free time around winter. Really? My husband would be thrilled. Chapter 149. Spring's finale. Humans evolved to a higher dimension through language, but in the most crucial process of DNA mixing, they revert to being like animals. Language disappears and humans are governed solely by actions, sounds, gazes, expressions, scents, and emotions. In that moment, humans are no different from animals. Brief conversations may occur, but they are only a small part of it. When swept away by waves of passionate emotion, humans abandon all reason and surrender to instinct. I was no different when I opened my eyes this morning. Last night, surely I definitely spent time with this man who fell asleep beside me in the narrow bed. An incredible amount of time. Really, incredible. Time with the furnace output set to maximum. Memories of everything that happened after I surrendered to the flow of consciousness flashed through my mind one by one. When I opened the air intake wide, the fire burned so vigorously. I thought it might burn my body too. Clothes sliding off. Bare skin touching. Cold sweat flowing from tension. Him smiling, saying even that was cute. Ooh ugh. The more I imagined, the more I curled up from my fingertips. It felt like all the sensations I experienced yesterday were coming alive again. When I felt Siwoo's touch lingering on various parts of my body, goosebumps spread across my skin, and my waist arched involuntarily. I didn't want to recall this part. I was truly like a beast then. Me, who usually speaks so articulately, was reduced to using just a single Korean consonant and vowel. Hakkeok touching my burning face, I carefully slipped out from under the blanket. Seeing my naked body was a first since bathing. The floor was warm, and the air wasn't too cold for early autumn. Why did he turn on the boiler? The guy who always said we could just endure with blankets when living alone had turned on the boiler. Was he worried I might catch a cold? I should put on clothes first. I'm still a bit embarrassed. As I was tiptoeing toward the middle of the room where clothes were scattered, thump. Are you up? Heek. Siwoo's hand flew out and grabbed my thigh. Electricity ran through my body, and I screamed as I ran to the bathroom. Hey, Kay. Sorry. You were getting dressed. I slammed the door shut and collapsed onto the toilet cover. It was fine last night, but now I can't get my thoughts straight. Yes, this is isolation to control the beast within me. I fled because I felt like I might pounce on Siwoo without realizing it. Once we've crossed that line, Siwoo wouldn't refuse if I asked. He would do his best for me. You're beautiful even now. Arg. Don't recall it. Don't recall it. I thought the fire in the furnace had gone out, but why are the embers still so strong? I could roast 100 sweet potatoes with this heat. Are you okay? Knock knock. Siwoo asked while knocking on the bathroom door. Yes. I'm fine, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. Smiling, I slowly headed toward the bathtub. I needed time to organize my thoughts. Yesterday was because I was caught up in the moment. I can't keep going like this. Siwoo has an important competition left. 1 month. Just endure for 1 month. With Siwoo here, I'll be fine. I won't die. Because he promised to protect me. Yes, I'll be fine. I turned on the cold water full blast and asked Siwoo to bring me my phone. It was time to listen to classical music. Cold or not, I needed cold water to cool my head. Ki-won, here's your phone. Heek. Why are you like that? No. Why are you flinging the door open like that? Ah, sorry. Siwoo apologized for thoughtlessly opening the door. I quickly closed it and pressed my back against it. Yesterday was a special situation, but today is different. After already showing everything. Is that how you want to play it? After revealing everything to Siwoo, there was no reason to hide anything anymore. I don't want to lie to him. I want to share everything with him. We are the same person, but also different people at the same time. Nudity is precious. It's not something you see often, but what is my mouth blabbering about? Precious? It was unique, indeed. Don't talk about it like some game item. The more I spoke, the more my embarrassment multiplied. Should I just stay quiet? I really thought it was precious. I understand if I never see it again. You were that beautiful. It was really good. Just in case, don't ever say you'll service me or anything like that. Your speech is too long, Siwoo. You received some wrong sex education. In the end, I'm just insulting myself. If I hadn't teased him before, I could have strongly refuted, but why did I tease him? I wasn't going to. I sighed briefly and headed to the bathtub. When I dipped my foot into the water that was about 1/3 full, I screamed involuntarily. Ah, cold, taking a cold bath. Yeah, to cool my head. You're going to listen to classical music, right? Just as I was adapting my body to the low water temperature, Siwoo recklessly opened the door again. Hey, Kay. It's cold. What does that have to do with you? While I covered my eyes with both hands, Siwoo got into the narrow bathtub first. With a splash, I removed my hands to see him shivering and smiling in the cold water. Even if it's cold water, wouldn't it be less cold if we get in together? Is he crazy? Yes, this is absolutely insane. To suggest bathing together so boldly, and after seeing each other naked for the first time just yesterday. Come in. I've always wanted to listen to classical music like this with someone I love. I was speechless at his boldness. Meanwhile, my body was honest and my feet moved toward the bathtub on their own. Splash! Splash! Soon half of my body was submerged in the cold water. Leaning my back completely against Siwoo, I asked, honestly, are you worried about looking like a pervert? What would make me look like a pervert? Well, who listens to classical music naked in a bathtub? The teachers would scold us. Siwoo's eyes sparkled as he replied, a guy who used to mutter to himself pathetically in the bathtub every day is now showing a calm demeanor next to his lover. Wouldn't the teachers find that admirable? He was serious. If I meet piano teachers in my dreams, I must bow deeply. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're apologizing to the teachers in your mind right now. Stop reading my mind. It's creepy. Siwoo let out a disbelieving laugh and lightly pinched my cheek. Says the person who always reads my mind. Can't I read my own mind? You said we were different people before. Oh, whatever. Be quiet. I grumbled as I submerged my upper body into the water that had now risen to chest level. Bubble, bubble, bubble. As I blew bubbles with my mouth, Siwoo stroked my crown with his wet hand. I love you. What? Have you cooled off already? And no, I haven't. Then why aren't you answering? Come to think of it, had I ever told Siwoo I loved him since we started dating? Oh, not even once. It was somehow embarrassing to say it outright. I never knew the words I love you could be so difficult to say. Disappointing. I love you. That feels forced. I said I love you. Ah, I love you. Finding my reaction amusing, Siwoo chuckled. I splashed around like a child and Siwoo bumped his nose against the back of my head, letting out a small groan of pain. Even without saying it, you know how much I love you. Oh, that hurts. I know, but I wanted to hear it. You're really mean. Honestly, it's probably because we're bathing together naked. If we were fully clothed, I wouldn't be this embarrassed. It's the environment's fault. This is all because Siwoo barged into the bathroom. I curled up and blew bubbles. Siwoo hugged me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. From the phone we had set aside, our favorite classical piece was playing. It was La Campanella. Remember how ecstatic we felt when we first heard this performance? Yes. It was the piece that made us decide to become pianists. I closed my eyes and listened to the piano performance. Ding-a-ling. The clear bell-like sound resonated. Angels descended from heaven, lined up in formation, and sang a blessing for us. Love yourself. Love your destined one. This is nice. Definitely. At that moment, I felt the environment naturally transform into clouds. We were wearing clothes woven from clouds, lying together on clouds, listening to piano music. It was such a lovely melody. Forgetting that we were naked in the bath together, we spent a happy time at a concert meant just for the two of us. What does it matter where we are or what we're doing? Wherever we are together is heaven. I said I'd die with you, but I have no intention of letting Siwoo die. I must live. I don't want to leave Siwoo alone like the cafe owner. I must live. I will definitely survive. And stay with him until he dies of old age. People always die. Couples eventually part. But I will delay that time as much as possible. I will plead until heaven is moved and changes my fate. I love you. Asterisk. A month passed, and the change of seasons arrived with colorful streets. Siwoo advanced to the finals of the Danyang competition. And I, Kiwon, collapsed the day before the competition. My mother, who had been patting the back of Siwoo as he fell asleep leaning against the bed after crying, looked at me and said, I think you two might need to start preparing yourselves. Chapter 150. You were the cherry blossoms of April. One day, one of the 3-day competition. The finals of the piano division, which attracted the largest audience, were about to begin. Congratulations on making it to the finals. Siwoo's turn was scheduled last. The concert hall was well soundproofed, so the performances of the preceding contestants couldn't be heard in the waiting room. The only sound was the tap-tap-tap of Siwoo's fingers drumming on the table as if it were a piano. You've already made it through the preliminaries. You just need to beat the other two competitors. It's not that difficult. Let's become the best in Korea. Kiwon had said it wasn't such a big deal. She'd said their real goal was the international competition in 2025. Beyond this one, while this might be familiar territory for her, for Siwoo, everything was a first-time experience. Moreover, since regaining color in his performances, the sense of calm he used to feel in waiting rooms had long disappeared. The longer he waited, the more his anxiety doubled. Especially on days like today when Kiwon wasn't by his side, his fear reached the sky. Yesterday, Kiwon had collapsed. It happened so suddenly. Siwoo had driven with Kiwon in the car, ignoring speed cameras in his rush. When they arrived at the emergency room, Kiwon's mother, Margaret, who had been informed through security guards, was already waiting. Kiwon went to the examination room with her. During the various tests, including MRI scans and blood work, Kiwon remained unconscious, not opening her eyes. Several hours later, even after completing the hospitalization procedures and moving to a hospital room, she still hadn't awakened. When Siwoo, who had fallen asleep leaning against Kiwon's bed out of exhaustion, opened his eyes, it was already late. Kiwon smiled, embraced him, and comforted him. It's okay. You must have been really scared. Though she had only come from 3 years in the future, she was truly an adult. As if it wasn't surprising that she had suddenly collapsed, Kiwon smiled and stroked Siwoo's hair. How could that sorrowful smile be so beautiful yet constrict his chest at the same time? Siwoo thought he might have developed heart failure that day. Well, they'll need to do more tests to know for sure. But they say it's not an extremely dangerous situation right now. I just fainted due to anemia. Wasn't Kiwon the one who diligently ate the meals gang we carefully prepared? The one who was healthy enough to take morning walks with Rika every day? If this sudden fainting didn't signify the death she had foretold, then what did it mean? Siwoo couldn't agree with Kiwon's words. I'm really fine, I tell you. We don't know anything yet. Listen, if you mess up the competition tomorrow because of this, I swear I'll kill you myself. Why did it have to be yesterday? Why did Kiwon suddenly collapse yesterday of all days? They say I need to undergo a few more cardiac tests tomorrow for a detailed diagnosis, so I probably won't be able to come watch your performance. I'm sorry. I really wanted to be there, but things turned out this way. I'll come as soon as the tests are done. Even if I'm not there, think of me watching over you. Stay calm and perform as you usually do. Understand? Though she reassured him that everything was fine, his anxiety refused to subside. It's okay. Even if I die, it won't be for another 2 years. You don't need to worry until then. I should have told her to stop with the negative talk and just keep quiet. Really? Kiwon tried to reassure Siwoo, but she seemed unaware that such words only made him more anxious. I'm not going to die. Because I have you. We promised to change our fate together, remember? Min Kiwon boldly claimed she couldn't possibly die because she had a boyfriend she loved. But now Siwoo knew the truth. Nervous. A little. Last night, after leaving Kiwon in the hospital room with her mother Margaret, Siwoo had a drink with Baek Kyung-yeon, who was like a father to him. Since the competition was the next day, he couldn't drink much, but if he hadn't been slightly intoxicated, he might not have been able to properly hear what Baek Kyung-yeon had to say. Which is it? Is it because of Kiwon? Or because of the competition? With trembling hands forcibly steadied, Siwoo replied, both. Kid. Min Kiwon had a rare disease. It was the same disease her mother Margaret had suffered from, a condition like Russian roulette where her heart could suddenly stop at any moment, taking her life without warning. Is there really no treatment? They say there isn't. How can such a disease even exist? I wonder the same. Margaret had been lucky to survive, but there was no guarantee Kiwon would be as fortunate. The world is garbage. Indeed. It doesn't take bad people, but why Kiwon? Thump. Baek Kyung-yeon's fist landed on the back of Siwoo's head. She's not dead yet, you idiot. Stop crying. Today is important. Min Kiwon was sick. The woman of young Siwoo, who had promised to live together and die together, was sick. What was so important about today? Was the piano, was the competition more important than Min Kiwon? More important than her life or death? Absolutely not. Think of it as a gift for Kiwon when she finishes her tests and is discharged safely. Do your best. What happens when you prepare a gift, but the person you want to give it to is gone? Wouldn't that be just like the story of Kim Chom-jae? A lucky day indeed. Why aren't you smiling when you've won the trophy? Young Siwoo muttered, arbitrarily modifying a line from a novel. Baek Kyung-yeon sighed and approached him, massaging his shoulders. Kiwon is watching. How can she watch? She must be in the middle of tests. Even if she can't see now, she will later. I'll live stream it from the audience. Isn't individual recording prohibited at the competition? Who cares? With Kiwon in that condition, let them arrest me if they want. A bold statement only possible from a piano master of South Korea. Siwoo, who would have laughed at this under normal circumstances, couldn't laugh comfortably today. Young Siwoo. Siwoo. Baek Kyung-yeon grabbed Siwoo's shoulders again. And, pressing firmly, he said, do you remember what I told you when you said you wanted to become a pianist? Siwoo nodded slowly. That was when Siwoo was 5 years old. A time when he didn't know how many keys a piano had or what arduous path he would have to take to become a pianist. But Baek Kyung-yeon, who was a young father figure then, also didn't know the correct way to teach music to a child. At that time, Baek Kyung-yeon was only in his late 20s. He was making a name for himself globally as a pianist, expanding his influence and increasing interactions with junior musicians. Though he thought of Siwoo as a son, he was still an inexperienced teacher for raising him as a pianist. However, the thought of sending him to another teacher felt like abandoning a child who had already lost his parents. With the thought that he might one day become a piano teacher himself, Baek Kyung-yeon began teaching young Siwoo. That beginning was precisely a lesson on the attitude toward music. The piano is a tool to realize human desires. That's why Siwoo learned to listen and understand before reading sheet music. Partly because Baek Kyung-yeon was lacking as a teacher at the time, but also because Siwoo preferred playing by ear rather than reading sheet music. His learning speed was so fast that Siwoo soon became able to clumsily replicate the pieces he liked. And then he hit a wall. Like typical piano students, the time came for him to study sheet music, fingering techniques, scales, octaves, chords, arpeggios, and other specialized methods. Performance is showing people your desires through the medium of music. Baek Kyung-yeon nodded. Then he offered the best advice he could. Don't think of the competition as a test. The judges are just an audience who came to hear your performance. Play for the audience. Let them hear what you desire. What do you desire most right now? Siwoo's trembling hands finally stilled. Strong determination filled his once wavering eyes. His posture, which had crumbled in despair, straightened. I wish Kiwon wasn't sick. I wish Kiwon wouldn't die. I wish Kiwon would keep smiling by my side. Though they had talked about changing fate together, Siwoo had always been anxious. He was still young and lacked life experience. It was natural since he had never experienced anything like this before. It's the same now. Would this performance extend Min Ki-won's life? Could the desperate act of a mere human reach the heavens? His worries were mountainous. But I'm you. You are me. Min Ki-won is there. We are always watching each other from within. No matter how far apart we are, I can see everything. A tiny Min Ki-won lives in a corner of Siwoo's heart. We are one. The color that couldn't be expressed before. The color regained by a man who was merely imitating others. That color sings of a girl's survival, praying for the girl's longevity, love, and happiness. With clenched fists, Siwoo burned with resolute determination. I will go out and perform for Ki-won. Baek Kyung-yeon smiled. Yes, let's go. Chapter 151. You Were the Cherry Blossoms of April 2. The Donghyang competition is one of the two major competitions held in Korea, but it doesn't receive particularly high international attention. It was natural in a way, as most young musicians aim for competitions associated with maestros who have made significant marks in the classical music world. However, even though it's a competition held in a small country like Korea primarily for its citizens, its prestige is not low. This was especially true for South Korea, which was becoming an emerging powerhouse in classical music. Just as a young student might set their sights on Harvard but gradually adjust their goals downward as they age. Among those who have begun the path of a performer, some descend while others ascend. Korea's two competitions served as a kind of baseline that separated those who would rise from those who would fall. Those who rise receive an invisible stamp of approval indicating they have the potential to perform on the world stage. Some judges, seemingly aware of this image embedded in the competition itself, primarily evaluate candidates on their adaptability to the world stage. However, as mentioned several times, the competition is fierce even for domestic competitions. It's remarkable how many people major in classical music in this small country. But with limited positions available, not all young performers who apply can shine. Some have to give up this path with tears in their eyes. There are no exceptions, even for those who have invested years or nearly a decade. Since art inevitably has areas that cannot be achieved through effort alone, once you reach that point, you either acknowledge the difference in talent and strive to break through the minuscule probability to reach the top, or you switch to an easier path like others. It's one or the other. Even if not a performer, there are many jobs where one can enjoy performances. This is because a single performer doesn't lead all business aspects. But there is only one shining star on stage. That shining star reduces everyone who supports them to mere supporting roles. However, there are too many mountains to climb to become a shining star. One must demonstrate unwavering technique and skill while under pressure on stages with large audiences. One must perfectly recreate the cultural atmosphere of the era when the piece was written. Only by knowing how to add one's own interpretation and how to elicit empathy for that interpretation from the audience can one become a shining star. That's what competition winners are all about. Only by fulfilling the difficult task of creating autonomy while adhering to norms could one claim the position of being the best among the nations or the world's musical prodigies. I'd like to hear a comparative evaluation of candidates Ju Hyun Woo and Sun Narai. Today's competition had 8 judges in total. The chairman of the Dongyang Music Foundation, seated in the center, asked the judges sitting to his left and right. A middle-aged woman with glasses in the nearest seat to the left raised her hand. When the chairman nodded, she began to speak. First, I'd like to support candidate Sun Narai. Despite having relatively smaller hands, she executed arpeggios and octaves more cleanly in the required piece. Anything else? It was a close call. Their musical appeal seemed similar. However, perhaps due to nervousness, they didn't seem to fully incorporate their own interpretations. I felt more of their mentor's influence than their own colors. This time, a middle-aged man stroking his rough beard on the right raised his hand. I somewhat agree with Professor Woo Soo-yeon. Neither candidate displayed a distinct color. It seems nervousness was the cause. The middle-aged man had also participated as a judge in the semifinals held about 10 days ago. Nevertheless, we must select a winner from among them this year. Compared to other candidates, these two performed the best. According to Professor Cha Gakyan, we must focus on technique and completeness of the piece, correct? Yes. Therefore, unlike Professor Woo, I'd like to give my vote to candidate Ju Hyun Woo. Why? Sun Narai was certainly superior in the required piece, but that's only when comparing the required pieces. When comparing all selected pieces, Ju Hyun Woo is better on average. Professor Cha glanced at Professor Woo and continued. It seems Sun Narai prepared more diligently for the required piece, which suggests she anticipated advancing to the finals. After all, the final required piece was announced at the beginning of the year when the competition notice was released. That's right. Professor Woo, do you have any comments? I agree with Professor Cha on that point. What about the others? Several judges sided with Professor Cha. The rest remained neutral. Professor Woo looked away, seemingly embarrassed. It appeared she had some indirect connection to candidate Sun Narai. It seems we've somewhat determined the ranking between these two candidates. Let's reconsider after hearing the last candidate. The chairman of the Dongyang Music Foundation held the profile of the last participant, Young Si-woo. His gaze first went to the name of the professor who taught him, just as when he first saw the profile. The last one is Young Si-woo, a student of Professor Baek Young-yeon from Hanyang University. Professor Cha raised his hand as if he had been waiting. Si-woo received the highest score in the semifinals. Professor Cha, could you elaborate on your evaluation from then? All judges simultaneously turned the page to the semifinal evaluation results. Based solely on the semifinal evaluation, I believe Si-woo was closest to winning. However, the difference with other candidates was minimal, so I think we should listen to today's final performance. After all, the pressure of semifinals and finals is quite different. Indeed. For the finals, quite a few family members of participants and invited audience members attend. The chairman glanced around the judges' area. The packed audience was quietly waiting for the next participant's turn. If he can't overcome stage pressure, we might see different results. Still, when you hear him, you'll feel he's distinctly different from other candidates. His performance has a definite color. How did you feel about it, Professor Cha? Listening to him reminded me of dating my wife in our younger days. Everyone assumed it was a beautiful love, except for one person, the foundation chairman. "Ah, I apologize, chairman. No, there's nothing to be sorry about." The chairman laughed heartily as he drank his bottled water, but couldn't hide the sadness evident in his expression. The middle-aged woman sitting next to Professor Cha scolded him quietly. "Professor Ah, I'm sorry. It just came out. I enjoyed it so much back then, and in trying to explain that, I ended up the chairman's wife had recently died of cancer. The 3-day funeral had ended just last week. That's why none of the judges had expected him to attend today. Everyone knew they were a couple whose love was so beautiful it made others envious. That's why he had hidden his reddened eyes in the dim lighting when the topic of love came up. Still, I think it's good that you came. Is the next candidate's performance that good? You'll feel it as soon as you hear it. I didn't mention my dating days for nothing." Professor Cha closed his eyes with his fingers interlocked. It was amazing. The piece wasn't originally meant to evoke such feelings. I was surprised to see someone who could perfectly recreate the era while creating a different feeling through personal interpretation. I thought, as expected, of Professor B. Kyungmyeon. "Ah, right. He's Professor B. Kyungmyeon's student." The words "as expected of Professor B. Kyungmyeon" naturally came from both of them. He was also famous for rarely taking students, but each one he trained became highly successful. Last year, wasn't it Song Seong-hyuk who placed as soon as he came to Korea for the Dongyang competition? Yes, I remember. It caused quite a stir. People were asking why an overseas performer was in a domestic competition. This one was a bit slightly more fresh than him. I thought, so this is youth. Ha ha. While the two judges were chatting, the last candidate they were waiting for, Young Si-woo, took the stage. With calm steps showing no sign of nervousness, he stood before the piano and bowed to the audience with his hand on his jacket button. As applause continued, Si-woo sat down and looked at the piano. Usually, candidates spend quite some time at the stage. Time to adapt to the stage filled with audience members. Time to mentally press imaginary keys to make a good start. Time to review the entire program prepared for the finals. For young candidates, a 50-minute solo recital was an equally pressuring occasion. If they take too long, the organizers ask them to start, but typically they spend 1 to 3 minutes in silent preparation and meditation. However, Si-woo struck the first note without hesitation. Simultaneously, there was a stir among the judges. Did he change the program order? Clearly, the first piece in Si-woo's submitted program should have been Chopin's Nocturne Op. 9, No. 2, which is well known to the public. For some reason, the piece announcing the start was Chopin's Etude Op. 25, more familiar by its nickname Winter Wind. Changing the order of one's prepared solo program is not a problem, but usually, candidates postpone pieces they haven't memorized well. In such cases, the overall storytelling of the program is damaged, so judges typically consider it a bad sign. Perhaps that's why all the judges frowned. However, after the short, lyrical introduction that felt like storytelling in front of a warm fire on a winter night passed, and the passionate main melody that sounded like a window breaking in a strong wind began to flow. "Bo," the chairman, whose expression hadn't changed despite everyone's concern, closed his eyes. Like someone at a concert. He had suddenly switched from evaluation mode to appreciation mode. They said he would play warm and lovely pieces because he was in love. But that wasn't the case at all. The wind carried in the music was the freezing wind of severe cold. A mere 20-year-old boy was demonstrating an atmosphere that only someone who had experienced terrible pain and sorrow could perfectly perform. Chapter 152. You were the cherry blossoms of April 3. Just before Young Si-woo's final performance was about to begin. 4 people sat in the best seats in the audience. All were guests invited by Young Si-woo, but among the 4 who sat with one empty seat in the middle, none were conversing with each other. Si-woo hadn't invited them hoping they would chat amicably. He had hoped that today's important guest, Min Ki-won, would serve as the connection point between them while sitting in the middle. However, Ki-won couldn't come due to circumstances. So this frozen atmosphere was, in a way, inevitable. At most, Song Sung-hyuk and Yoon Ji-chang, who were acquainted from studying under the same professor, exchanged a few words. Though Yoon Ji-chang and Yoon Ji-yu were siblings, they sat separately at the edges, seemingly still uncomfortable showing closeness in public. Did something happen to Ki-won? She insisted on meeting today. She probably just woke up late. It's nothing serious. In fact, something serious had happened, and Song Sung-hyuk knew exactly what it was. His heart trembled like a child cast out into the bitter cold without a coat, but outwardly he couldn't show the slightest hint. Margaret Hebler had strictly cautioned him to keep it within the family. Ki-won collapsed. Thank goodness Mom was in Korea. It could have been disastrous. An ominous sign that Min Ki-won's death was approaching. That made Song Sung-hyuk more anxious than ever before. Why had death come so suddenly? She had been fine for a while. He had hoped she could live her entire life just carrying the possibility that she might die. I'll send her after seeing today's test results, if they're okay. Go cheer for him in her place. He must be very anxious right now. Since childhood, Song Sung-hyuk had somewhat resented his mother, Margaret. When he said he liked Ki-won and didn't want to become family with her, she apologized, yet he disliked how she seemed to favor young Si-woo. But what could he do? Nominally, the two were family, and Min Ki-won had never treated Song Sung-hyuk as more than family. Though Sung-hyuk had always hoped she would desire to break free and had subtly cast his fishing hook, Min Ki-won never budged. She was like a stone Buddha, a person who had lived looking only at young Si-woo from the beginning. That's why when they said they were dating, he accepted it without lingering attachment. But to go like this, it doesn't make sense. And meanwhile, young Si-woo was competing in the concours. In this desperate situation where Ki-won could die at any moment, he stood on this stage because his concours was supposedly important. What a stubborn bastard. Or did Ki-won ask him to? To live his life regardless of her. To keep that promise. What an impressive talent he is. Impressive guy. Yes, he truly is an impressive person. Young Si-woo was unbelievably impressive to Song Sung-hyuk. If Song Sung-hyuk were in the same situation, he wouldn't even think of placing his fingers on the keyboard, let alone compete in a concours. Young Si-woo and Min Ki-won. How much time had the couple spent by the piano? How many memories and how much love must be embedded in that singing instrument of black and white? Could young Si-woo really press the piano keys while recalling all of that? It would have driven Song Sung-hyuk mad. The moment he pressed a key, he would remember what Ki-won had said. Pressing another key would bring back her smile. If Song Sung-hyuk had faced such a situation before a concours, he would have given up. He wouldn't have been able to move forward. Even if it were the finals of the world-renowned Queen Elizabeth competition or the Chopin competition. Si-woo looks unusually nervous today. At Yoon Ji-chang's words, Song Sung-hyuk focused his gaze on young Si-woo. Nervous? Him? Throughout his walk from the edge of the stage, there was hardly any visible tremor in his body. With his good eyesight and keen observation, Song Sung-hyuk couldn't miss it. He was in a state no different from someone walking alone on a crowded street. Everyone in the audience, including the judges, seemed unable to exert any pressure on him. Young Si-woo appeared prepared solely to perform in his own domain, for his own performance. There was a slight tremor, but it seemed it wouldn't affect his playing at all. While Song Sung-hyuk was analyzing young Si-woo, Yoon Ji-chang spoke. Hey, we're all here to cheer for Si-woo today, right? Should we quietly say fighting together? Baek Chung-ah glared at Yoon Ji-chang with half-moon eyes. Her look clearly stated they weren't close enough for such familiar talk. Unable to tolerate her brother's foolishness, Yoon Ji-yu immediately punched him. Flack! A rather loud sound echoed through the silent concert hall. Several people turned their heads toward them. Yoon Ji-chang quickly straightened his posture while holding his forehead. "You're becoming like Dad, sis." "Shut up." Whether the two were quietly arguing or not, Baek Chung-ha was busy watching young Siwoo. "He's very nervous." Siwoo rarely showed his emotions. That's why ordinary people hardly notice his emotional changes, and even the keen-eyed Song Sung-yeok was no exception. But the girl who had spent 14 years looking only at young Siwoo could tell. "What are you so worried about?" Young Siwoo was nervous. He who had never trembled even in competitions where he hadn't performed well. Today he was trembling more than usual. What could it be? What was making him anxious? Was it the empty seat in the middle? Because Min Ki-won hadn't come to watch the concours. Annie, though she had been upgraded from grandma to Annie, Min Ki-won remained Baek Chung-ha's arch nemesis and enemy. That enemy was absent today. Late for her boyfriend's concours. If she were to be completely absent, Baek Chung-ha firmly resolved to find her after the concours and deliver a hectopascal kick to her backside. Come quickly. But right now, she only wished for her to arrive. A person who had never been nervous on stage was now extremely tense due to Min Ki-won's absence. The outcome was predictable. Though Baek Chung-ha had never even set foot in a concours, it was natural that performance skills would deteriorate when nervous. For the piano division, our final candidate, Young Siwoo. The announcer briefly delivered the essential information and put down the microphone. Though no applause was requested, the sound of clapping hands came from somewhere. The source was Yoon Ji-chang. Yoon Ji-yu immediately tried to stop him, but it sparked a wave, and soon several audience members followed with brief applause. Whether the siblings were squabbling beside him or not, Song Sung-hyuk opened the pamphlet listing the concours performance program. The first piece is Chopin's Nocturne, a gentle and somewhat sticky touch starting with the first two notes, gradually spreading into a melody of kind embrace. Although young Siwoo was typically not the type to get nervous, he should be a bit careful now. As a piece requiring delicate touch throughout, a momentary excess of force could disrupt the entire atmosphere. Curious about his choice, Song Sung-hyuk closed his eyes in anticipation. He was surprised that the starting note was E, not B flat. Hurriedly checking the pamphlet again, he noticed one piece. It was Chopin's Etude Op. 25, Winter Wind, which should have been the third piece in today's program. A sudden change in the program doesn't negatively affect the score. He had only promised which pieces he would play today, not their order. But Song Sung-hyuk wanted to know why young Siwoo had chosen to start with Winter Wind. Why Winter Wind? Is he following his emotions? The Nocturne is a piece showing the serenity of a calm night. It might be unsuitable for the currently unstable young Siwoo. That's why young Siwoo had chosen this. To start with a passionate piece, gradually becoming one with the piano, shedding his inner worries before transitioning to Chopin's Nocturne. Let's say there's someone who excels at math in the morning, Korean at noon, and science in the evening. When given homework for all three subjects, what would be the wisest plan? Obviously, math, Korean, science in that order. Young Siwoo had changed the order of pieces through such simple reasoning. But this way the overall picture of the program he had initially wanted to present would be ruined. The order. Is there a reason you arranged it this way? Is it a sequence of precious memories? What? Memories related to Ki-won? Well, yes. According to what he had discussed with his professor, the program was meant to depict the process of the couple meeting, parting, meeting again, and finding happiness. The thrilling encounter on a cool spring evening and the bittersweet year spent together, two nocturnes. After the inevitable separation, the time apart was as cold as winter wind. The romantic reunion of the two was as refreshing as popping candy bursting in the mouth arabesque. The progression of their relationship, deepening love, ripening fruit. It was beautiful like a dream Liebestraum. Blessing the united couple, beautiful celestial bells ring out La Campanella. Starting with Winter Wind meant he would have to completely reverse the storyline he had conceived. Would that be possible for young Siwoo, who had just managed to compose himself? It will be difficult to depict the love story as planned. Song Sung-hyuk thought, having heard the previous two candidates perform, that he would have to be content with simply portraying a transition from passionate emotion to love. To smoothly connect the emotional line from the end of Winter Wind, the next piece should be Debussy's Nocturne and then follow with Chopin's Nocturne, the designated concurs piece. He could then proceed with the program in the order he had set. After all, it was best to play the designated piece when physical strength was still good. Or not. However, the piece that followed after the majestic conclusion of Winter Wind was Arabesque. The Nocturne had merely been pushed back, the program remained unchanged. Young Siwoo was trying to depict a romantic reunion, but his performance was not romantic at all. But it felt like walking on thin ice with spiked shoes. It was like an uncommon genre of romance, what one might call a romantic thriller, romance with a thriller twist. Chapter 153, You Were the Cherry Blossoms of April. 4 Was I expecting too much? When the Winter Wind was being played, the chairman had been quite excited. He just didn't show it. 20 years old. For a performer who wasn't yet at a perfect age, it was truly excellent emotional control. Expressing the stormy feelings contained in the Winter Wind requires layering complex emotional imagery. One must recall anger in one part of the mind while simultaneously controlling that anger in another part, appropriately channeling it through the fingers. Good performance requires both emotion and reason to coexist. Too much of anything becomes poison, too little leaves something to be desired. Only those who can precariously walk that middle line rise to the top. They're recognized as better performers and can make their names known to the world. Still, I suppose I can have a bit more expectation. Fortunately, the chairman currently thinks very highly of young Siwoo. The first performance, Winter Wind, had healed his heart. This is precisely why human emotions are interesting. It hasn't been long since he lost his wife. Fortunately, as time passes, he's gradually emptying his heart. Compared to the first day she left, he now eats and sleeps like a normal person. To him, Siwoo's Winter Wind was close to pure despair. No one in modern times knows exactly what feelings Chopin had when composing Winter Wind, but some say he expressed his fear of winter due to his weak lungs. Well, it could simply symbolize the fear and terror caused by winter. Or it could represent his own difficult circumstances having to endure through winter. Perhaps, looking back on his tumultuous life, he was crying out through music, "Ah, life is so damn hard." Though no one knows the truth, young Siwoo maximized the despair by adding just a touch of his own color to Chopin's interpretation. Similar to sensations, emotions leave a stronger impression on the heart when they're pulled sharply in another direction after leaning one way. That was precisely Siwoo's method of portrayal. Before transitioning to the rapidly progressing main melody, the introductory tune was so calm it bordered on emotionless. Like someone who felt nothing suddenly collapsing from a shocking event. His keyboard sang the voice of someone enduring and holding back tears in the face of overwhelming despair. But the next piece after Debussy's Arabesque began, he was somewhat willful. This can't be considered a good interpretation across the board. At first, it evoked a tense romantic scene, reminiscent of reuniting with an ex-lover who had betrayed and fled. But by the end, it felt like a child clinging to his mother's pants, throwing a tantrum for a toy he couldn't have. The expression was quite extreme, almost as if deliberate. What was he trying to express? How should it be evaluated? The chairman's concerns only deepened. Glancing at the other judges, they all seemed to have similar reactions. A performer who made such a strong impression with the first piece suddenly seemed to lose steam. Once a strong impression is made, it's easy for that evaluation to continue. The finals are essentially a 50-minute solo recital. If one peaks at the beginning and gradually declines, the audience's disappointment grows immensely. It might be different if he recovers with a final piece, but young pianists sometimes face problems when they connect too well with the audience. They feel the audience's disappointment themselves, and due to excessive pressure, they self-destruct. As soon as there was a break after the arabesque performance, Professor Cha Gakyan, who had praised Siwoo in the preliminaries, scratched the back of his head with an awkward expression. I praised him so much, but today seems challenging. Perhaps it's because of the large audience. That might be it. He's not very experienced yet. Besides, our competition wasn't his first other domestic competition in the youth division during high school. That's right. Well, let's keep watching. He hasn't played the required piece yet, and his first piece was quite good. The chairman subtly indicated that he would give a very good score for Winter Wind. The other professors nodded in agreement. Next piece. If Debussy's Arabesque No. 1 is elegant and romantic, Arabesque No. 2 is fresh and crisp. With a completely different feeling from the introduction, when played consecutively, it's easy to evaluate how the performer incorporates different emotions with distinct performances. Tarararan, 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 tarararan. Unlike the monotonous touch of the left hand, the right hand moves busily. It evoked the liveliness of a 7-year-old child frolicking in a garden with a small puppy. A different emotional portrayal from when he played No. 1. If there was any similarity, it was that both naturally brought to mind a child. To conclude, what Siwoo tried to portray in No. 1 wasn't a romantic thriller. It seemed that the emotional storm from the previous piece, Winter Wind, simply carried over to Arabesque No. 1. A child. Depicting a growing child then, what was the first Winter Wind? It was nothing like a child, closer to playing the shock of death. Since the other professors would provide meticulous evaluations of the performer's technique and skill, the chairman wanted to understand the identity of the program Siwoo was trying to express. Death. A close death, moreover, a death of someone close that the chairman could empathize with. Family history isn't in the applicant's profile, but because Professor Baek Young-yeon had extensive connections, the chairman roughly knew about the boy named Young Siwoo's circumstances. He had lost his parents when he was still an innocent child and had been raised by Baek Young-yeon ever since. If he was just an infant, it would be hard to feel much. That means the death he portrayed wasn't his parents' death. But the intense pain felt in the performance suggested it had to be someone very close. Perhaps a girlfriend? But if it was a girlfriend, why did the following two pieces feel so childlike? Could it be the sudden death of a first love from childhood? At around 5 years old, while it's difficult to understand death, the shock can be several times that of an adult. It would be reasonable to feel a despair greater than what the chairman felt when he lost his wife. Such a sad event. He lost his parents and even a girl he liked in his childhood. What a desperately tragic life this boy has lived. Losing 3 close people before the age of 10 is definitely not an experience an ordinary person would go through. Is that why his performance is so mature? The performance of a boy matured by much pain was rich in color, if not quite at a professional level. There's a sense of willfulness that almost crosses the boundaries of competition standards, but being young, it's somewhat forgivable. And since it's not just Siwoo's issue, it's a plus for him as he tries to adhere to the competition's rules relatively well. There are barely 2 missed touches per piece, and even those are hard for the general public to notice as they're buried in chords. The pedal rises and falls as naturally as his own foot, with neither excess nor deficiency in its intensity and duration, speed, dynamics, and cleanly connected notes. It's a flawless, perfect performance. Add to that his own poignant story. How could one reject it as inadequate? All that remains is for him to maintain the current atmosphere and conclude his story excellently, allowing the chairman to give a satisfactory evaluation. The chairman was now like a web novel reader anxious for the next chapter. He couldn't predict where the life story of a boy who lost his parents and girlfriend would go. He could somewhat infer from the program list Siwoo submitted. But interestingly, most of the remaining pieces sing of emotions that are lovely, peaceful, or calm. If he aims to portray a gradually maturing child, he's likely to move from the two nocturnes to Liebestreum. At the end, La Campanella would be played, signaling the conclusion of the recital. But there's a twist. The rarely performed Liebestreum No. 2 is on the list. The reason this piece becomes a twist in the flowing atmosphere is because its subtitle is The Happiest Death. Why would he include all three Liebestreum pieces, including this No. 2? What is he trying to say? The chairman couldn't help but be curious. Surely he's not planning to place Liebestreum No. 2, The Happiest Death, after La Campanella. If death occurred only once, there would be no need to play it separately from Winter Wind. Is he trying to portray a fantastic love with a new woman, followed by a separation due to her death? The competition would become a perfect love poem of a heartbroken boy, but apart from the splendid stage, the chairman felt sympathy for young Siwoo. The dam holding back the chairman's tears might burst again in just a week. I hope not. Chapter 154. You were the cherry blossoms of April 5 on stage. While Siwoo's fingers were communicating with the keyboard, his mind was busy talking with a tiny Kiwon in his head. Due to the sudden change in the program order, he had much to discuss with her. So, are you really going to play in the exact order I arranged? Yes. It's your competition, but where did all your opinions go? Your opinion is my opinion. Bug. Damn. That I am you shield again. Then let's do this. I've come up with a storyline. Why do I feel like I already know what it is? Since you're me, of course you'd recognize it. Are you stupid? Look who's calling who's stupid. Didn't you say you hated being called Appa? Anyway, listen. Nocturnes by Chopin and Debussy. Both tell the story of when we were very young, meeting in Austria and searching for accordia together during the night, then Winter Wind. The chaos we experienced when our bodies were switched. The story of spending 14 long years apart in our separate worlds. A romantic reunion. And a sweet budding romance. There's no piece more appropriate to express this than Arabesque. By the way, why aren't you asking about why I included Liebestreum No. 2? Do I need to ask? You know the subtitle of this piece, right? How could I not? Both you and I have lived for Liszt. The original subtitle refers to the most blissful death in an erotic sense, but thinking differently, it could also mean being happy to the point of dying, right? That's why I included it. A change in perspective. With this double meaning, Min Ki-won will not die. So to summarize, it's our love story. Exactly. So the order will be No. 1, No. 3, No. 2. Noble love. Us who loved as much as we could love. Us who are happy to the point of dying. Somehow hearing it from your mouth makes me embarrassed. Weren't you embarrassed when you said it yourself? Why? Hee hee. Is there something wrong with me saying I like you? Are you shy, Mr. Young Siwoo? And for the finale, La Campanella, of course. What's with that lewd expression? What are you thinking? You included it with that intention, didn't you? No. I already said Liebestreum No. 2 was about erotic death. Oh. By the way, why didn't you include Mesva? That doesn't fit this theme at all. Play it at another competition. Disappointing, but I guess that's that. You know, Siwoo, this competition is an important test to see if you've really cured your chronic problem. Let's confirm if you've regained your color and if it's properly conveyed to the judges before showing off your skills. Got it. Huh? Really? You won't find a girlfriend who thinks about you like I do. Yes, thank you. If you're thankful you want me to pull your lips. WH what? Hey, do you want to die? You were puckering your lips, so I thought you wanted me to pull them. You really are. Aren't you kicking too hard? It was a program he had joyfully arranged even after discussing Kiwon's death. Now, he had completely reversed the order. It couldn't be helped. It was impossible to play the love story with Min Ki-won in his current state of mind. With his professor's support, he had made his resolution. But that didn't mean the anxious corner of his heart was completely purified. It was fortunate that after experiencing a reunion through winter wind, he could at least express warmer colors. If he had played in the original order, he might have received the lowest score in Chopin's competition, which was the designated piece. Instead of a piece celebrating the beauty of night, it would have become a cursed piece of a gloomy and eerie foggy night, deeply infused with all kinds of negative emotions. One of the many selves in his heart, the tiny key one, said that his color was returning, that he just needed to keep going this way. It's been successful so far. The love story with Min Ki-won had somehow transformed into the life story of Young Si-woo and Min Ki-won. This was possible because Young Si-woo and Min Ki-won were intertwined like ivy. Winter Wind sang of the despair and regret of Min Ki-won and Young Si-woo who faced death in another parallel world. Arabesque depicted the Young Si-woo, who was lost in shock after experiencing a romantic body-switching event, and how he improved under Ki-won's care. The following two nocturnes would describe how the two grew in their respective places, doing their best until they met again, and the cozy night scenery from the perspective of the two studying late into the night. Then, with Liebestreum, he would sing of the romance between the two who met again, and finally conclude with La Campanella. But for one piece, whether to play Liebestreum no, two, or just give up on it, he was still at a crossroads. Until Min Ki-won's death came this close, Young Si-woo had taken it somewhat lightly when she talked about her afterlife. He had no choice because she would complain about his expression if he took it too seriously. But what about now? There was no Ki-won to scold him. Si-woo's thoughts only turned endlessly negative. Professor Baek-young had somehow managed to prevent the dam from breaking, but now it was a situation where Min Ki-won had to come. A change in perspective. With this double meaning, Min Ki-won will not die. Min Ki-won had said that. But Young Si-woo couldn't accept it that way. What if I just don't play it? Would that work? It might be a foolish choice following superstition, but in the face of a rare disease that couldn't be scientifically proven, Young Si-woo had no choice but to be a fool. But when a performer runs away from a piece they've committed to play, it creates a problem of credibility. Professor Baek-young always said it, and so did Senior Jo Jin-yeol, whom Min Ki-won had introduced him to. That enemies can arise in any way, so it's best to build as much trust as possible. What would Ki-won say if she later heard that Si-woo had skipped the performance? How would Min Ki-won react? Would she nag him with a rap, saying, "Did I die just because you played Liebestreum no, too?" He wouldn't mind hearing that at all. I don't know what to do. In the end, there was only one thing Si-woo could do. Let's push it to the end of the order for now. All he could do was push that piece as far back as possible and hope that Min Ki-won would appear in the audience in good health. "Please, come back quickly, Min Ki-won. Without you, this competition is doomed." It was the first time in my life I'd received so many tests. Contrast agent in my arm, in and out of a donut-shaped machine. I couldn't even count how many X-rays they took. Not satisfied with that, they also did ultrasounds and took blood 3 times. When I complained that they didn't need to take so much since the results wouldn't come out immediately, the doctor glared at me with a stern expression. So now I have 3 injection holes in my arm. 2 from blood draws. 1 from enrollment 4. Achoo. Did you sleep without a blanket again yesterday? I had a fever, so I was hot. That's when you need to cover up more. Especially when you're not feeling well. HMPH. It was a strange thing. My rational mind knew she was Ki-won's mother, but my instinct regarded her as my own mother. So, like a real daughter, I could cling to her without any awkwardness. It felt like I was being spoiled by my real mother. If my mom were alive, would it feel like this? Young Si-woo would have definitely run to his mother crying about the pain as soon as his ribs broke. Even though he didn't show it outwardly, he was always starved for affection. So, care to share how it felt to make your mother's heart drop? I let go of Mom's arm that I was holding and avoided her gaze. Looking at the corner of the hallway, pretending not to know my cheeks were stretched. Eek! Quickly. I'm so we no need to be sorry. It's the beautiful fruit of your love. Shortly after, the clinic door opened and a nurse came out calling my name. On the ceiling of the hospital corridor, a sign reading obstetrics and gynecology hung from transparent fishing line. We've scheduled your next appointment for next week. Take care. The nurse smiled brightly at me. It was a congratulatory smile. Since yesterday, everything had been a whirlwind, from collapsing to being dragged around for various tests. And on the second day of testing, a shocking truth was revealed. Really, it's laughable. I thought I might not die thanks to Siwoo, but I never expected this. Remember what the doctor said? Yes. Yes. How long are you going to keep being so formal? Yep. Mom looked at me with dissatisfaction and made a loop with her arm. I hung from it, dangling and smiling. Don't let your stomach get cold. Don't eat just anything. Gang, we will make a list for you, so make sure to carry it and be careful. Tell Siwoo too. I will. At least your responses are good. She seemed happy that her daughter had come back to life. Though she was smiling, I could see her secretly getting teary-eyed. So, are you going to watch Siwoo's competition? Of course. He'll be waiting. He might even be stubbornly refusing to play until I arrive. Good. Be careful and don't overdo it. Understand? Mom patted my stomach. You're not alone anymore. Got it? Chapter 155. You were the cherry blossoms of April 6. After setting up his phone on his chair to record Siwoo's performance, Baek Young-yeon hurried out of the hall to answer the call. What happened? The caller was Margaret Hebler. Since she was the only one who knew important news about Min Ki-won, this single call would likely determine Siwoo's fate as well. Baek Young-yeon felt his hand trembling as he held the phone and supported it with his other hand. It's serious. Yes. Margaret sighed briefly, then said with a smile. They're about to become parents. That Ki-won is becoming a mother. Baek Young-yeon, who had mentally substituted words incorrectly, was about to sink into despair when he suddenly came to his senses. Mother. Something seemed wrong. He had naturally expected to hear that she was dying. Mother. Yes. She even completed her obstetrics checkup today. Her collapse was due to anemia in early pregnancy. Baek Young-yeon took a moment to compose himself. Whatever the news, he needed to stay calm to listen. I mentioned before, remember? That there was a certain method, reliable but with unpredictable probability. Yes, you did. That method worked perfectly. Without anyone even telling them. Well, they were the type who would walk across the world to find each other if they had to. But wait. You said the probability couldn't be guaranteed. How did that work out? Margaret chuckled on the other end. Today's detailed examination confirmed it. The malformation in Ki-won's heart has completely healed. Ki-won's heart was congenitally malformed, a hereditary disease passed down through generations from Margaret and her ancestors. It was inherited by both males and females, but men had extremely low survival rates. Women often survived through special means. That's why when they first had Ki-won, the couple was initially relieved. Had it been a boy, they would have helplessly watched him die young, but at least as a girl, she had passed the first hurdle. But the problem began when 5-year-old Ki-won met a boy named Young Siwoo. Min Ki-won became completely devoted to Young Siwoo. The couple tried to divert her attention by adopting Song Seong-hyuk, but failed. Ki-won, deeply in love with Siwoo, couldn't feel romantic emotions toward any other man, so the plan was scrapped and Song Seong-hyuk had to become Ki-won's only brother. With no other choice, Margaret brought young Siwoo into her foundation and watched over his growth, planning to eventually bring him to Ki-won's side and unite them. But the problem wasn't just with Ki-won. After separating from Ki-won, Siwoo became strangely obsessed with the piano. as if his life depended on it. Perhaps because of this, despite their romantic reunion at the cafe, their relationship didn't progress as quickly as expected. Their awkward relationship seemed endless. Eventually, Kiwon collapsed less than a year later, unable to adapt to life in Korea. Kiwon had to say goodbye to Siwoo and return home, continuing her lonely struggle for life in constant fear of imminent death. She flatly rejected her mother's suggestion to tell Siwoo the truth, saying she didn't want Siwoo to spend his life grieving over her death. The following April, Kiwon's short life ended, like cherry blossoms falling in spring rain. Song Seong-hyuk withdrew from the Queen Elizabeth competition due to the shock. That was Min Ki-won's fate in the timeline where young Siwoo died in a traffic accident. It's such a mysterious disease. The fetus grows, material exchange begins through the placenta, viruses are exchanged, and healing occurs naturally. Whether it's due to the father's genes mixed in the fetus, I don't know. Even after living for over 40 years, I still don't fully understand it. It truly is a remarkable disease. Indeed. In a way, you could say the fetus saves the mother. But with extremely few patients to study, it's still not medically proven. That's why I said it was probabilistic. I understand. It couldn't have been easy to explain. But a magical thing happened, just as it had for Margaret in the past and for Min Ki-won now. The fruit of their love, their child, opened up Min Ki-won's future this time. Anyway, Ki-won is on her way there now. Here? To the competition? Yes. She's rushing over, saying she wants to see Siwoo. Is it okay for her to rush? As an expectant mother? It's still early, so it's fine. But she should be careful about possible anemia. I'll go meet her. She'll be driving, so you can meet at the parking lot. I'll let the security guards know. How long will it take? She'll arrive soon. About 5 minutes. She's practically here already. Baek Kyung-yeon sprinted to the parking lot with all his might. If Min Ki-won appeared in the concert hall looking even slightly tired or weak, it would inevitably affect young Siwoo's performance. That must not happen. Ki-won must shine before Siwoo. She must clearly show that she's fine, healthy, that nothing is wrong. The competition continues. Young Siwoo finished playing 2 nocturnes, followed by Liebestreum No. 1 and No. 3, and now he reached the piece he loved most. She's still not here. Siwoo's gaze turned to the middle of the audience, to the seat that remained empty like a hole in his heart. People around were clenching their fists in support, but he couldn't possibly notice them. The empty seat was too conspicuous, showing no signs of being filled. Time left 14 minutes. He had extended the intervals between pieces, planning to skip Liebestreum No. 2 if necessary, so the recital would end in about 45 minutes. If Ki-won didn't come, he would skip Liebestreum No. 2. Even at the cost of losing points, Siwoo wouldn't regret this choice. Instead, he planned to perfectly complete his favorite piece, which might become the final one. So perfectly that no one would notice a piece was missing. This was a piece he had played every day without fail since he first started piano at age 6. He knew everything about it, the phrasing that suited him best, the pedaling he considered perfect, the arpeggios, octaves, trills, scales. He knew the entire piece. He just hadn't been able to give it color. You're with me, right? Ki-won. Today, a tiny Min Ki-won was with young Siwoo. That's why he could express colors he couldn't before. A performance by angels descending to earth with handbells was about to begin. Siwoo would offer his final prayer to these angels. Please save the poor soul named Min Ki-won. She is beautiful, lovely, bright, and pure. I understand the desire to take her soul to heaven and preserve it forever, but it's not time yet. If heaven's decision remained unchanged despite this deep plea, Siwoo was prepared to choose war over prayer to protect Min Ki-won. The angels descending from heaven would transform from sacred performers to bandits coming to kidnap Min Ki-won. Why are humans great? Because even after suffering divine linguistic terrorism while building the Tower of Babel, they are still challenging divine power in modern times. After taking a deep breath, Siwoo's fingers moved toward the keys. His positioned hands alternately struck notes 3 times each, in the same rhythm, like bell sounds leaving lingering echoes. Professor Cha Gakyan swallowed hard as the highlight of the program began. Finally, here it comes among all the pieces scheduled for today. This was the one he had been waiting for. When he had drinks with Professor Beek Yumyan in the past, Beek showed him a video of young Siwoo playing La Campanella as part of seeking advice. At that time, Siwoo's La Campanella was perfect yet hollow. It lacked color, feeling mechanical and awkward. But today's young Siwoo was different. Every piece contained special emotion. From the opening winter wind, the narrative gradually softened toward romance, creating an exquisite storyline. La Campanella was the climax before the epilogue, essentially the highlight of today's program. Depending on how he portrayed it, the audience's ecstasy could literally become a heavenly banquet with angels, or merely a secular feast on earth. In this tense moment, young Siwoo's fingers moved toward the keys. Soon, the delicate ringing and resonance of bells subtly filled the hall. Though it was clearly a staccato section, a technique of playing notes short and detached, it conveyed remarkable richness. A delicate resonance created purely through keystrokes without pedal emphasis. From the very beginning of the performance, young Siwoo seemed to be loudly proclaiming that the audience should forget his past self. "Oh!" An exclamation of admiration escaped his lips despite his attempt to contain it. When the main melody began, Cha Gakyan barely restrained himself from applauding. Truly delicate. While pedal use varies greatly among performers, if one can perfectly depict the ringing of bells using only keystrokes and the concert hall's natural resonance without pedals at the climactic moment, when the pedal is finally used, the piece offers the audience an incomparably ecstatic experience. Cha Gakyan observed the chairman's satisfied expression and was certain. He knew who would be declared the winner of today's competition. Chapter 156. You were the cherry blossoms of April 7. After the service ended, inside the quiet cathedral draped in the darkness of night, a clergyman is quietly polishing a handbell used for singing hymns, relying on a single candle for light. Swish, swish. As the dry cloth glides over the bell, a slip of the hand thump. It brushes against the rope hanging beneath the handbell. Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling. Perhaps fascinated by the clear ringing sound, or perhaps because he was originally a bellkeeper, he puts down the cloth and pulls the rope hanging beneath the bell repeatedly. Though the melody was simple, perhaps because of the silent cathedral empty of people, in that moment it was no less beautiful than any choir. When the clergyman, entranced as he struck the handbell, noticed his surroundings brightening, he was already floating among a flock of flying handbells, hovering above the clouds. A bright sky. Handbells nestled between fluffy clouds began to ring freely. Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling. It soon became a concert that astonished the clergyman. This must be what it feels like when God has angels perform heavenly music. Just as the clergyman clasped his hands together to offer a prayer expressing his rapturous appreciation, angels hidden in the clouds revealed themselves one by one, giggling. The angels seemed unaware of the clergyman's presence. They rang the bells while singing la la la, oblivious to everything else. The clergyman felt an ineffable holiness. And he also felt guilt and regret that he alone was witnessing such a beautiful sight. So he thought that everyone should be able to hear the angels' performance, that he should play it during Mass to share heaven's grace even with those who showed no interest. The clergyman focused on the angels' performance to memorize their melody, each beat, the intensity of pulling the rope to strike the bell and the process of holding the vibrating bell to mute its sound. But since he couldn't grasp everything just by observing from afar, he approached the angels little by little. Very gradually, the number of angels grew. The bell sounds became increasingly rich and fantastical. It was truly a beautiful octave. 4 angels moved up and down stairs at precise intervals, and with each step, the handbells they carried sang mysteriously. The clergyman was overwhelmed with a desire to respond to this beautiful harmony the angels had shared with him. Unable to contain himself, the clergyman inadvertently made a sound. Startled by the noise, the angels began to scream one after another, starting with those closest to him. The pitch gradually rose, resonating throughout the entire sky. Angels frantically ran about with their handbells, seeking hiding places in the clouds. Among them, the clergyman tried to calm them down, but no one listened to him. Pop! The scene changed, and the clergyman found himself back in the cathedral. Ding! A single small handbell in his hand made a lonely sound. The melody he had savored and memorized note by note had, for some reason, left only a hazy trace in his mind, like fog, that something had been there. Ding! Ding ding, the sound from the clergyman's handbell echoes against the cathedral walls, and thus the piece comes to an end. The beautiful moment was now over. It was time for the audience to return to reality. Bravo! Starting with Professor Cha Gakyan's brief sigh, the judges reflexively began to applaud but stopped themselves. Young Siwoo's La Campanella had provided everyone with such an enchanting experience that they almost forgot this was a competition and not an ordinary concert. The chairman nodded with a satisfied expression, then looked at Professor Cha Gakyan and gave a thumbs up. He's the winner. It was the moment when the competition's victor was decided. Although not a student he had personally trained, Cha Gakyan was pleased that the candidate he had recommended had impressed the chairman. At this rate, the remaining piece will be perfect too. The first piece, Winter Wind, had been almost violent with barely contained emotion. But as he progressed through the pieces, the excitement was refined into emotion and description. La Campanella was the culmination of that journey. The last remaining piece was Liebestraum now. 2. The Happiest Death. The happiest death, although open to interpretation, the happiest death would surely be passing away in one's sleep. La Campanella itself was like a scene from a rapturous dream right before death. If one were to lose their life without any pain after experiencing such a beautiful moment, wouldn't that be the happiest death? Cha Gakyan was interpreting Siwoo's program in his own way, eagerly waiting for the final piece to begin. But after 1 minute, then 2 minutes passed. Siwoo seemed to have no intention of playing the next piece. He was just staring at the concert hall entrance, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Why isn't he playing? Each participant was given a common time limit of 50 minutes. If that time passed, points would be deducted for violating regulations. Liebestraum No. 2 was about a 4-minute and 30-second piece. Siwoo had only 6 minutes left, so if he didn't start within the next minute, time would be tight. Candidate Young Siwoo. Doesn't he look like he's given up? At the whispered comment from a judge beside him, Cha Gakyan examined Siwoo's expression again. The anxiety visible on his face, though quite far away. Perhaps it was related to whoever he was waiting for. If the person you want to hear your performance doesn't come, you won't play? Is that it? Why? After playing so perfectly until now, why act like you've given up now? No matter how perfect his performance had been so far, a competition was still a testing ground. If he didn't play the promised piece and left claiming an urgent matter, even professional pianists would be gossiped about. The program is a promise to the audience. And in a competition, it's also a promise to the judges. Breaking that promise results in significant point deductions. No matter how well he had scored until now, one impulsive action at the end could ruin everything. The competition victory would slip away. Cha Gakyan tried to discreetly check the chairman's expression, but their eyes met, so he froze. The chairman, with a hardened expression, was examining what was at the end of Siwoo's gaze. Looking at the concert hall entrance, the chairman murmured softly, "He'd be better off giving up." Siwoo's impulsive behavior was an emotion that could only be understood by someone who had wasted time waiting for a beloved person who would never return. Among the judges, only the chairman fully understood Siwoo. In fact, just as the chairman had predicted, the story was heading toward the saddest conclusion. The chairman was convinced that the one to receive Siwoo's final piece, the happiest death, would be Siwoo's new lover. I feel so sorry for him. The judges, as if by agreement, all looked not at Siwoo but at the concert hall entrance. Though they couldn't understand Siwoo's emotions, they followed the chairman's actions, sensing there must be a reason behind them. As the deadline for Siwoo to play Liebestraum No. 2 passed and the audience began to stir after several minutes of Siwoo's gaze fixed on the entrance, it happened. Click! The entrance door opened, and a figure slowly walked into the concert hall from the relatively bright outside. Due to the backlighting, the face wasn't visible, but at that moment, as it started, suddenly, piano music began to play from the stage again. But the audience's gaze remained fixed on the entrance. The judges too, with their ears wide open, watched a young girl standing in front of the closing door. With an expressionless face, the girl carefully descended the stairs one step at a time, in rhythm with the playing piece. Then she boldly walked to the spot closest to the stage. Her seat was the empty space right below the stage, not permitted for audience members. Though the girl's figure blocked part of the audience's view, no one complained or showed any displeasure. Everyone felt as if the scene itself was part of the performance. Even though the chairman was the only person in the concert hall who almost perfectly understood Siwoo's emotions, anyone who had followed Siwoo's program from beginning to end couldn't help but feel it. Today's entire program was actually for this girl. If she hadn't come, they wouldn't have been able to hear the last piece. Only through her existence was Siwoo's performance complete. Like having dreamed a sticky, sweet daydream. When the performance ended, most of the audience had their eyes closed, savoring the moment. The chairman wiped his eyes with a handkerchief and stood up. It was both a competition and a concert that comforted the heart. For the chairman, today would surely be remembered as one of the unforgettable days. But before the chairman's soft applause could echo through the concert hall, clap, 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 cheerful and lively applause sounded from the front. The source of the applause was the girl who had last entered the concert hall. She was smiling brightly like someone at a festival. Like a cherry blossom that blooms regardless of location when April arrives. Chapter 157. You were the cherry blossoms of April 8. The competition was over. And so was Siwoo's emotional struggle. The award ceremony was about to begin, and they needed to leave the waiting room. But Siwoo had been sitting motionless on the waiting room sofa for several minutes. He was tightly hugging me on his lap, rubbing his shoulders and cheeks against me while sobbing endlessly. Stop crying already. How can I not cry? Well, that's true. But you're making me feel awkward for causing such a fuss. Siwoo's voice trembled finely. How much emotional distress he had endured throughout the competition. Even though he claimed to have eaten 3 proper meals a day, his cheeks looked sunken. We should go eat something delicious after the award ceremony. Would beef be the best choice? Let's go for now. You need to get your results. Okay. Don't be disappointed even if it's not the score you expected. I won't be disappointed, Siwoo murmured while stroking my shoulder. Whether I get 3rd place or get disqualified, as long as I have you, that's all I need. I almost screamed without realizing it. Young Siwoo really has a talent for surprising people. Of course. We're not alone anymore, we're 2 now. Be proud. Your juniors were that healthy. Siwoo's hand swooped in and covered my mouth. With a flushed face, he looked at me with crescent moon eyes and said, I know without you saying it. Sorry. Through the slightly open corridor of the waiting room, the host's voice flowed in softly. Next, we will have the Piano Division Awards. Presenting the awards is the chairman of the Danyang Cultural Foundation. I hopped down from Siwoo's lap. Let's go. It's our turn. Okay. When he took my hand, I pulled slightly to gain momentum and asked, So, are you confident about getting 1st place? No. I think it will be difficult. What? Why? Because of you. DCH. When you put it that way, I have nothing to say. I tried my best, but I'm not sure. Actually, on the way here, I heard from Professor Baekhyun about how the competition went, and thanks to that, I learned that Siwoo had displayed his ingenuity by completely flipping the entire program. He didn't just try hard. Young Siwoo gave his absolute best. As a result, he created a concert of unimaginable emotion. Well, even if Professor Beak hadn't shown me the competition video, I would have believed in young Siwoo. I would have been confident that he delivered the best performance despite any adversity. Because he is mine. Because he's the person I know best. Because he's someone whose performance skills are unparalleled. If he could endure by thinking of me, if he could create a miracle in that 1 hour concert, I had no doubt that first place would naturally belong to young Siwoo. We will now present the awards, starting with third place. Candidate Sun Narai. Please come to the stage. I ran down the corridor leading to the stage, pulling Siwoo's hand. Our footsteps echoed loudly in the empty hallway. And suddenly, Siwoo stopped me, grabbed both my cheeks, and poured out all the emotions he had accumulated over the past few days through his lips. It was too sudden, but my body responded naturally despite being separated for just about a day. My arms wrapped around the back of his neck, and my upper body naturally leaned against him. The affection I felt from him was genuine. We loved each other so much that no one could separate us. Love creates miracles. And those miracles sometimes change even a person's predetermined lifespan and fate. I'm so glad I have you. Yeah, me too. I'm glad you're my girlfriend. I smiled brightly and whispered in Siwoo's ear. I'm glad I could be your girlfriend as we embraced tightly, smiling with expressions that looked like we might cry at any moment. Next is second place. Candidate Ju Hyun Woo, please come up to the stage. From the end of the corridor, we heard the host's voice announcing the final results of the competition. After the competition, the chairman arranged a separate meeting with Professor Baekhyun. Under warm lighting perfect for dining, a table was set with a snow-white tablecloth and Western-style gold candlesticks. The two men lifted their teacups from the table, exchanged light greetings, and laughed heartily. You have a good student, Professor. You flatter me. You should be proud. Like that Song Sung Hyuk fellow you showed me before. Each of your students is such a big shot. I should be the one seeking them out to pay my respects first. Baekhyun put down his teacup and smiled proudly. You shouldn't be surprised yet. I plan to produce 2 more students of that caliber. 2 more? Does that mean you currently have 4 students you're nurturing? Yes. That's how it turned out somehow. That's surprising. One must be that disobedient student you mentioned. Who's the other one? You've seen them too, Chairman. That student who didn't follow audience manners at today's competition. The chairman recalled what happened during the final part of the piano division, when young Siwoo was performing his last piece, Liebestraum No. 2. You mean Siwoo's girlfriend? Huh? How did you know? Siwoo performed so poignantly that it was impossible not to know. Perhaps it's because I recently lost my wife. It made me think of her. Ah, as I mentioned then, I'm truly sorry about that. It's all right now. The chairman's expression was filled not with sadness or longing, but with satisfying relief. Siwoo comforted me. Throughout the performance, I was anxious. I was in the same position, just waiting for Siwoo's girlfriend to arrive. Hearing praise for one's student from someone else's mouth is quite enjoyable. Having raised many students, Baekhyun knew this feeling better than anyone. And among them, young Siwoo had always been his sore spot. Being someone who rarely criticized his students, how much more so with Siwoo? It was good that he worked hard on his own, but how many times had he almost scolded him out of worry that he might ruin his health? For Baekhyun, restraining Siwoo rather than pushing him was the more difficult task. I'm glad you liked it. But young Siwoo finally overcame his barriers. He spread his wings wide and soared toward that distant place he had so desperately wanted to reach. From the moment he declared he would play the piano, he was someone who did well on his own, so I just guided his direction to keep him from straying too far. In the end, to think he would resolve his weakness through relationships with people. Even I couldn't do that. It was a method possible only for young Siwoo, something even his teacher, Baek Kyung-yeon, couldn't attempt. However, thinking of the classical stars of the past, Siwoo's approach wasn't entirely strange. They too shared passionate love. The complex connections of love and relationships during those times influenced their music. Most works by popular classical composers include pieces dedicated to beloved women or dear ones. Even pieces expressing stormy anger were often related to complicated love affairs. I hope Siwoo does well in the international competition 2 years from now. With your support, Chairman, he will do well. Haha. I'm grateful for your words. I truly support young Siwoo. The chairman closed his eyes and recalled Siwoo's competition performance. That enchanting moment that felt like a concert Siwoo had prepared just for him. I never dreamed I would find comfort in a competition performance. By conveying what he wanted to express while adhering to the strict judging criteria of the competition, young Siwoo had already surpassed the level of a professional pianist. Asterisk 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 asterisk. After winning the competition, Siwoo became a star at school, comparable to Song Sung-hyuk. Unlike in my previous life, he started talking about piano with Song Sung-hyuk more often. It seems this made him more popular among the students. As a result, even though I would have let him roam freely at school before, I frequently went to Hanai University to monitor Siwoo until winter break, warning others with intimidating glares that he had a pregnant wife, so hands off. However, my fierce presence around Siwoo only resulted in gifts and snacks from female seniors. Yoon Jae-yu seemed jealous of this and hovered around me, blocking these unnecessary advances. She worried that a pregnant woman might get sick from eating just anything, so she brought safe and healthy snacks for me. As you know, healthy food often doesn't taste good. Most of the snacks Jae-yu worked hard to make weren't very tasty. Craving something sweet, I avoided Yoon Jae-yu. Once, I even played hide-and-seek with her on campus as she tried to feed me healthy food. From then on, time flew by incredibly fast. In the late stages of pregnancy, my body was heavy, making it difficult to move around. After giving birth, I was busy with postpartum care and mostly stayed at home. Then another half-year watching over my daughter until she could walk. Meanwhile, helping Siwoo prepare for the international competition, and before I knew it, my daughter was 2 years old. Wow! The cherry blossoms are already blooming. Indeed! The day I had been so worried about, the most important goal I had set after becoming Min Ki-won had dawned. I smiled at Siwoo as I removed a cherry blossom petal stuck to our sleeping daughter's hair. It's going to be okay. After Siwoo saved my life, I had been thinking about this day all along, and I found a way to definitively twist Siwoo's fate. It wasn't as difficult as I thought. All I needed to do was borrow the bridge where the accident happened for a moment and confirm from a distance if the truck really crosses the median. Trust me, young Siwoo. Siwoo embraced me and Siwon, closing his eyes. Yes, I always do. Chapter 158, Volta brackets 1-3 years can feel vastly different depending on the person, environment, and occupation. For a soldier performing repetitive, grueling tasks, 3 years can feel as long as 30. For someone leisurely eating and playing without any concerns, 3 years can pass as quickly as 3 months. And my 3 years were tumultuous ones. You should stop coming now. Why? You keep wandering around in your condition. I come here by car, you know. Still, after winning the Dongyang competition, Siwoo's popularity at Hanai University soared beyond imagination. Requests for duets came flying in from everywhere. After fending off Yoon Jae-yu and helping him grow, somehow I ended up with even more troublesome matters. Eventually, I dragged my increasingly heavy body to school every single day without fail. I hated the thought of my beloved Siwoo performing with someone else. After all, performing together was our own way of sharing love. Until I feel reassured, I'll keep coming to monitor you. I absolutely won't collaborate with anyone else, so please, can't you go home and rest? How can I be sure of that? I've already asked the professor. And when I mentioned you, everyone understood. Besides, some of those people. I pressed myself against the door and shot fierce glares at the people lingering outside the practice room. Some of them waved snack bags in their hands. Inside the transparent plastic packaging, cute rabbit-shaped cookies rustled. A moment later, Yoon Ji-yu appeared from somewhere, took the snack bags from the lingering people, and approached our practice room. Click. Opening the door, she entered with a smile and said, "Here." But what she handed over wasn't the snacks she had just acquired, but rather a flavorless green health snack she had made at home. The other treats made by the older students were already all tucked away in her shoulder bag. I frowned at the strong, grassy smell wafting from it. I'm pretty sure there were other snacks. You should eat this, if only for the baby in your belly. I don't want to. Young Siwoo. Take care of Kiwon. I'm going to practice. Yes, senior. I managed to sneak one snack out of Yoon Ji-yu's bag as she turned away, but it was quickly confiscated. I glared at Yoon Ji-yu with puffed cheeks, but it was useless. In the end, only the tasteless health snack remained in my hand. I want to go home. Not going to monitor me. I don't have the energy. Siwoo chuckled and poked my back repeatedly. When I turned my head, I saw a bag of snacks in his hand. Just now, another senior gave this to me, said to share it with you. I hugged Siwoo with sparkling eyes. My boyfriend really is the best. Hey, everyone outside can see excessive displays of affection in the practice room. Everyone knows we're getting married, so what does it matter? Hey. Siwoo struggled to stop me as I leaned in for a kiss. With my cheeks held in his hands, I puckered my lips like a fish. Your love has cooled. Seriously, are you going to keep making me feel like trash with that excuse? But Siwoo gently stroked both my head and belly with his warm palm and said, "When we get home later, I'll shower you with love. Just be patient a little longer." As soon as I heard him say he'd shower me with love, my body began to heat up on its own. That's cheating. How is that cheating? Hurry home and rest. While husbands need to be extremely careful, intimate relations during pregnancy are possible if you avoid the early stages, late stages, and times when you're not feeling well. However, perhaps because of that one time I collapsed, Siwoo hadn't desired me in bed even once since the competition until today. We're only having this conversation because today is special. Otherwise, it would have obviously been brushed aside. To prevent that from happening, I properly provoked Siwoo. "I'll wash up and wait for you at home." Seemingly bothered by my words, Siwoo followed me all the way to the parking lot and watched until I drove away from the school. Finding it amusing how he stood there staring at me, I took a picture and sent it to him. Me, photo, me, you look like someone who lost their country, me, lol. Siwoo didn't respond. It seemed like he was only thinking about finishing practice quickly and coming home. "Shoo, call me when you get home, shoo. If you don't, I'm barging in right away." Was he saying he'd come home without practicing? That would mean we could press our skin together earlier. For a moment, I was tempted to not call him as a prank, but thinking of Siwoo's important international competition next year, I decided to restrain myself. Today, my first birthday as an adult in 2024, was more special than any other. 7 months pregnant. A time when little Siwon in my belly was beginning to express his emotions through small kicks. After a delicious dinner, after blowing out the candles on a sweet birthday cake together, night fell. I climbed onto Siwoo's stomach, naked like a devil with a tail. It couldn't be helped. It had been over half a year since we'd had any physical intimacy after finding out about the pregnancy. Ah, does it hurt? And no, it's just been a while, huh? They say intimate relations during pregnancy are good for the baby's brain and emotional development, so Siwon will grow up without the deficiencies I had. And with all the love from Siwoo and me on top of that, how happy a life will he lead? I'm even a little envious. Oh, he's moving. Yeah, be careful, of course. This is all to satisfy